I'd like to start with a roll call of our planning board members, and I'll start with Peter Bramante.
Present.
Rosemary Eva.
Present.
Janice Gomes cannot be here tonight. She's not feeling well. I'm Stuart Hardy, and I'm here. Adam Raposa could not be here tonight. Christine Shea.
Here.
Amanda Souza Vieira.
Here.
And Christopher Shriver.
Here.
Thank you. So our first agenda item tonight is Colbea Enterprises LLC of Cranston, Rhode Island. It's a major land development master plan public informational meeting continued from June 7, 2022. This is the Seasons Corner Market and gas station with a drive-through. It's in a general commercial district, and it's also in a pedestrian-friendly destination zoning district. The time clock runs out July 12, 2022 tonight. So I would like to begin this agenda item. We're going to go into the public hearing and hear from members of the public soon, but I'd like to begin by just asking the attorney for Colbea, who is Robert Stoltzman, if he'd like to make a few brief comments, opening comments. I'll get to that agenda.
Light is on. Is that better?
Yes, but speak into the mic.
Yes, I will.
Super.
Thank you. Members of the board, the chair has correctly recited, and we agree with the procedural status of this. As we've indicated before, we look forward to hearing public comment tonight, and we would like the opportunity to respond to that public comment. We understand the statutory deadline and agree to extend it so that we have the opportunity to reply to public comment and offer responses to either council or the members of the public that are here. And we'll extend the time frame voluntarily in accordance with that.
Mr. Stoltzman, since you're here at the mic, would you care to request an extension of the time clock? And this would be the time clock for the major land development, item number 1 on our agenda, to a period in September that would be on or after the date of our September meeting. The reason I'm suggesting this is that we have a very busy meeting coming up in August and can't accommodate you in August. But our September meeting, I believe, is September 13. And that's our regular monthly meeting for September. And if you would request an extension of the time clock to September 13, 2022 or later, we could then accommodate you at that meeting.
Yes, sir. September 13th is fine, and we request that for, I'm sorry.
Right.
Yes, for master plan and design review, if that's appropriate.
And now can I ask you if you would also do the same for the second item on our agenda, which is a development plan review, site and design, under zoning article 20. And again, that time clock expires tonight, and if we could get you to extend it to September 13 or beyond, that would be nice.
Yes, sir.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Would you like that in writing, Todd?
No, it's a public hearing. He's publicly stated it.
Excellent.
If you want to take a vote on that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, but now we need to make a motion to accept your request for a time clock extension. So I will make that motion.
I will second it.
So we have a motion, we
Both
have a
motions,
second. We have to vote on it twice.
As long as we do two.
Oh, you can do it both? I would like to amend my motion to extend the time clock for both the major land development and the development plan review. So we are now voting to accept an extension for both of those parallel meetings.
And I will second the motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Do I hear any questions or comments from any member of the board? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise their hand. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to.
That easy.
And now I'd like to call on the attorney for a citizens group, Preserve Tiverton, and ask, I believe it's Karen Benson, Attorney Karen Benson, representing Preserve Tiverton. Karen, do you have any brief opening remarks you'd like to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, my name is Karen Benson with a law office at 1 Courthouse Square in Newport, Rhode Island. I represent the group known as Preserve Tiverton. For those of you who might not be familiar with the group, several of the members are here with us tonight. They were formed, all citizens and residents of the town of Tiverton, formed for the purpose of, and I quote, promoting responsible economic development, comporting with the town of Tiverton's history and quality of life. So thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. I would like to present some comments. I'll organize them as follows. I'd like to talk about really 4 main topics, I guess. First, I'd like to suggest, because it is an agenda item, that this is a development that requires peer review. I don't know when in tonight's agenda that might be taken up, and I may actually reserve the right to comment further on why that would be appropriate, but I would suggest that we need a consulting engineer for issues to include traffic, stormwater control, and some of the other information that's contained in the applicant's package. Secondly, I'd like to focus on some of the things that were raised at the TRC. Specifically back in June of this year, June 16th, you had a technical review committee meeting. And so I spoke to my brother, and I'll frame my comments as both comments, and some will be questions, because that will give the applicant an opportunity to respond to those questions. So I hope we all find that helpful. Then I would like, if the board feels it's appropriate, to comment further on the application of the pedestrian-friendly district. But we did file a memorandum, and in the interest of time, and I know there's also been quite an elaborate memorandum presented to the board, I would, at this point, waive further comment on that so that we can get to the meat of what I'm interested in addressing, hopefully for the board. And then I might have an exhibit or two. So that is pretty much the outline of what, with your permission, Mr. Chairman. So going to the TRC notes, this is the meeting of 6/16/22. If I can just go to that. And on page 2 and 3 of those notes, the TRC asked that lots of information, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not in the right place. That lots of information be provided by the applicants. And this included, without limitation, more information about the stormwater plans. For example, does the plan include anticipated increase in the change in flow from the identified upland areas? This is the project narrative at the applicant's exhibit number 5. The area has multiple proposed developments. Have they been taken into consideration by the stormwater plans? The plan is silent on that. In the outline of the stormwater plan, this is the applicant's number 9 at page 1, it does not address the impacts of any future development. And as you all know, there are multiple developments in the immediate area that are pending at this time, or at least anticipated. If they are not before you, they might be before zoning. I don't profess to be an expert, but we do know, and it is a matter of record, even from the initial hearings back in 2021, that this is a critical development area for business development for the town of Tiverton. More specifically, and I do apologize if I'm drilling down now, I go from very broad to very narrow. It's just the way I reviewed the documents, so I apologize for that. Salt storage on the site. From an environmental point of view, this is applicant's exhibit number 9 at page 8. It indicates right now that snow removal, snow that's removed from the blacktop will be stored upland. I'm not an engineer, but I don't see how that's going to happen. I don't see where you could possibly store it. So where exactly will this be done? If it's proposed, I think you need some more specificity. Both of these issues, both salt storage on site and snow removal to be stored quote unquote upland, I don't see where there is upland. These can have significant impacts on the environment, both on-site and off-site. Remember that this site slopes, according to the applicant's drawings, to Main Road. So these questions are not insignificant. Also, because of the paved area, quite a large amount of snow could be stored on the site, especially if we get into extreme weather conditions, such as heavy snowfall or even blizzards. Still with the stormwater plans. There's insufficient information, in my opinion, and I'm not an expert, on the maintenance of the bioretention areas. Right now, there's no mention of an ability to expand those areas. There's no flexibility because of the footprint, because of what they're doing to develop the lot. Question, is there an ability to expand them? That is the bioretention areas. If, for example, and again, not to belabor the climate change issue, but it's a reality. If, for example, the current system should be overwhelmed by a catastrophic event, let's say a hurricane, or an extreme rain event, what would happen to the bioretention systems? I don't believe engineering has fully addressed that, and I believe this is the place that it ought to be done. Okay, now, I'm sorry, I'd like to go back to, if I can find it, the Trc Notes. This is quite a large package, so if you would just give me a moment, please. I have tab A2. You know what? I'll come back to that. So these are observations and comments, particularly focusing on traffic. Now, we have this report that's dated January of 2022, called a traffic impact analysis. And this is, Mr. Chairman, what I direct my comments to when I say I believe we need peer review. This is certainly one area. And here are some of the reasons why I believe it's essential that the board have either an independent traffic study or at a minimum a peer review of the existing study submitted by Colbea. First of all, the data was collected during COVID. And notwithstanding that there may be methodologies for addressing the fact that the traffic counts weren't what they are today or weren't what they were prior to the COVID crisis, we still need real traffic counts, real traffic data, I would submit. Not one day, which is what we are currently being asked to rely on. A single day in March of 2021 cannot fairly be said to collect true data. Additionally, and I hope I'm not reiterating things that the board is already aware of, please put up your hand if this has been considered and covered by your technical review committee or your staff members. But alternative forms of transportation, including motorcycles, regular bicycles, and yes, pedestrians, are not fully vetted in this study. And in fact, respectfully, I mean not to impinge it, it's not really a study. It's merely an analysis. And a project of this size needs much more. No data was collected on weekdays. No data was on weekends. No data was collected on any day during a certain period, let's say between 2 and 4 p.m., when buses would be transporting school children. I don't mean to be facetious, but there's no data about bikes and pedestrians because there were no bicycles or pedestrians in March of 2021. Even the most hardy outdoors citizens of Tiverton aren't riding their bikes in March. So that data is not adequate. I need I believe it's acknowledged that there's very little or virtually no sidewalks on Route 138. I believe the reports say, and the prior hearings and plan reviews have suggested that there is sidewalk on the west side and no of Main Road and no sidewalks on Souza Road. So let's put that into perspective. Any pedestrian traffic traveling to this facility, and it's captioned a corner market, so you presume the applicant wants people to go there by all means, whether that includes pedestrian and bicycle traffic. But the current plan does not propose any additional sidewalks. So that means either they have to walk on the west side or they have to traverse roadways that have either 1 to 2 feet of a curb, a berm, on the westbound shoulder and 0 to 1 foot on the eastbound shoulder. And that's in the case of Souza Road. And page 5 of the report acknowledges that. It acknowledges the current conditions and makes no effort to change it. Let's put that into perspective. A 0 to 1 foot on Souza Road. That's 1 foot. Can't see it, Mr. Chairman, but this is how the pedestrians will have to walk. It's ridiculous. It does not protect the public safety. I'm not going to submit this as an exhibit. It's a chalk only. I hope my brother understands. The point here is the current traffic plan does not provide for safe travel to this facility, period. Page 9 of the report purports to have safety analysis. And in fact, in so doing, the sight distances, where you'll be looking if you're trying to pull out or if you're trying to pull in, or how you will access the road from the neighborhood. And they study several of these site access points, because there are several, because it's an intersection. And the sight distances from one driveway on Route 138 does not meet the minimum requirement for sight distance. And that's down at the bottom of page 10 of the report if you want to look at more details. I'm not going to try to paraphrase what their engineer. I want to call out the deficiencies in the report for your benefit. And nevertheless, despite acknowledging this inadequacy, the engineer, the traffic person, whoever did the study, tries to conclude that vehicles would have adequate time to stop and avoid collisions. And I submit to you, they cannot make that conclusion with the requisite degree of certainty that an expert needs to give if you are going to give merit and weight to that conclusion. They just say it. He just says it, not with the required degree of certainty and not based on actual facts. In fact, this particular conclusion is contrary to the facts. And there's more. From the Souza Road entrance, they were not able to measure all sight distances because of vegetative growth. But he goes on to conclude that if they can cut down the vegetation, they, quote, that'll be us drivers, should be able to see up to the intersection. Should is not the required degree of professional certainty. That doesn't meet the standard. You can weigh expert testimony, as you well know, any way you want. But I submit that if we were following the rules of civil procedure and we were weighing evidence, this evidence is at best inconclusive and possibly in error. More specifically, he concludes in this report, if there's been tree trimming and clearing, he would, quote, assume that the sight distance to the east would be approximately 650 feet. But this isn't evidence. They didn't measure it. That data appears on page 12 of the report. Now, part of the information that appears in the report relies on U.S. Census data. And I don't know why they do that, but I believe it has something to do with calculating the number of trips and how many people live in Tiverton and what the traffic might be, et cetera. And that data appears on page 12 of the report. So I will suggest that the data is in error. And in support of that suggestion, I'd like to submit an exhibit. May I approach? How?
Yes.
Ms. Benson, do you have one for Mr. Stoltzman?
Yes, I gave him two.
Thank you.
Already, yeah. So the report, it suggests, want me to authenticate it? Oh. The report suggests that I don't need to look at the report, that the population of the town of Tiverton is 7,700 people. So I'm not trying to be funny. What I am suggesting is this. The data suggests otherwise. The data in the report isn't correct because we have the official website of the town of Tiverton. That's what you have before you. Please mark it as Preserve Tiverton or Objectors, however you like to mark such things, Exhibit 1. And you can see at the top left-hand corner, so that I can authenticate it, that I took it off the official website of the town of Tiverton in June of this year, June 2nd, 2022. I think we might have had a meeting scheduled that I wasn't able to attend. And it says that in 2000, there were 15,260 people living in town. So I submit that any data that suggests there were 7,700 is probably not accurate. And to be sure, one of our members, who's a magnificent researcher, one of our members, who's a magnificent researcher, checked with the United States Census Bureau, and this will be, I'll approach in a moment, Exhibit 2. And that suggests the same, that many, many more people than 7,700 live in the town of Tiverton. So what's the point of all of this? You know, are we trying to, well, if this data, which is readily available from multiple sources, public sources, including the United States government, if this data is not being used in this report, and how accurate could the report be? How, at best, we could say the report is based on inaccurate assumptions, and that is a risk if we're going to rely on it. What other data has been misrepresented or just not collected properly? What other so-called facts are simply inaccurate? So I'd like to submit this as Exhibit 2 for Preserve Tiverton, and it is the U.S. Census data. No objection.
No objection. Can you provide a copy, Mr.
So just for the record, what are the numbers? Because you don't have the exhibit in front of you. 7,757 people. That's on page 12 of the report. The U.S. Census Bureau says there were some 16,260 people. It's kind of a big discrepancy. And then the Town of Tiverton website, that was Exhibit 1, 15,260 people. Again, some of the evidence we're relying on, we're being asked to rely on, is either not the most current or not accurate. Staying on traffic for a minute, the planning board requested, I have to get organized and go back to the TRC committee minutes, because there were lots of great information as a result of that meeting. And that committee studied the package and made a series of requests of the applicant. And I guess my threshold question is, have those been addressed to your satisfaction? Have they been addressed at all? Because this issue of traffic counts and what data, in fact, Mr. Chairman, I think you may have raised it. What data do we have for Route 138? What Rhode Island Department of Transportation data could we get, could we be using so that we have good data? Again, publicly available information collected by a neutral party, not an applicant. It's available. Have they provided it to us? For example, there's a Rhode traffic cam on exit 5 going to Main Road. This was news to me. I don't know if it's up and running, but I submit to you that having that data could prove useful, not just for this development, for that whole portion of the north end. I think it's also fair to say, and I pose this to the applicant, to submit whatever data is available from RIDOT. I think other members of the board had raised a suggestion that this is a road that has some traffic accident history. And I don't know that we've ever had that history presented to us, but I believe it is appropriate and you should have that data. Yes, I believe there is data. I don't know what form it's in, and I don't know how it's stored, or if it's even accessible. You may have to petition to get it. But I believe my research, my law clerk's research, indicates it goes back to 2015 and 2016. So there is data for this road, RIDOT data. Some other unique features of the area, still with the traffic issue. It's a big issue. It's public safety, basically. It's not just a matter of inconvenience. And here's an example of that. Within 1/4 mile, and I thank, again, my team for this, because they provided me with this data, because they know this community. One of the team from Preserve Tiverton noted that within 1/4 mile, thereabouts, is Brookdale Nursing Home. And on this 2-lane highway must pass the emergency vehicles. I tried to call the fire department, and I did put in a request for the data, but I don't have it. But I submit to you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, that we should have that. And the question is this: will the fire department be able to get by if someone's waiting to turn into the proposed development? If there's no lane, even if a car pulls over, are the emergency vehicles, including the emergency wagon that's, going back and forth, one presumes, to Brookdale, sadly, are they going to be able to complete their mission in a timely manner? That's the question I pose, that I don't believe is addressed at all in this traffic report. Will emergency vehicles be either impeded or delayed to a catastrophic event? I'd also suggest that the applicants have had plenty of time to address this. The original planning board meeting, I looked at a video going back to February of 2021, 18 months ago. So we should have these issues addressed. I looked at the concept plan review, and there was some interesting information in there. First, I would ask, how many big tanker trucks are going to be delivering? Staying on the traffic theme, how many big tanker trucks are going to be delivering to the facility, and how often? And it turns out the applicant addressed that. And it's a pretty big number. 10 to 12 tractor trailers per month, delivering 12,000 gallons of fuel at a time. In fact, there's some really great information from that February 2nd, 2021 meeting that says if they sell 125 to 140,000 gallons of fuel per month, and the average automobile carries 8 to 12 gallons of gas, I can't do it because I'm bad at math, we can figure out the number of trips that they think they'll generate. And someone ought to do that. You deserve to have that data. It's important. Not just an off-the-cuff, here's how we figure it out from a marketing point of view, so we know how much gas to order. From a safety and traffic access point of view, I respectfully suggest they have that data, and you should have it. Yeah, that's from the February 2nd, 2021 concept plan review meeting. Can I have a moment, please? Okay. Just have to find my TRC notes from that 6. Yeah, okay, here we go. These are further questions of a general nature, not necessarily focusing just on traffic, that are coming out of the June 16th, 2022 Ad hoc Technical Review Committee. Have these requests been undertaken, and does the applicant intend to provide them to you? And lo and behold, Mr. Bramante, the first thing you asked for, a third-party independent traffic study. I'm not going to belabor it. You have the minutes to the meeting. I think we should go right down those minutes and have the applicant provide us with that information. More analysis for the drive-through queue, traffic movement and where it intersects with pedestrians, state DOT. Now I'm getting redundant. But here's one that I haven't covered that was made by Chris Cotta, the town administrator. And that is another safety issue that seems quite significant that the applicant ought to address. And that is analysis related to the protection of the town sewer line should there be gas leak infiltration given the siting of the tank close to the line. You know, there are two easements on the property, the skinny one on Main Road and then a thick one. And more care and engineering needs to be given to that, because that's the town's easement to maintain town services, where everyone in the neighborhood could be impacted if something went wrong. Not just of a disastrous, but even in a maintenance context, which is why I believe that the town administrator raised a valid concern. You know, there are lots of people here who want to speak, so I think I'm going to move on. I'm going to join the town solicitor or whoever in the audience has said that the pedestrian-friendly zone applies to this parcel. I've submitted a brief memo, and there has been quite an elaborate memo. And in fact, I agree and join that argument that it should control this project. I respectfully suggest that the project is not right for this neighborhood. It's clearly designed for a busy urban setting with the services being offered, 24 hours a day, the type of signage that's proposed. But most concerning is the lack of planning to mitigate traffic impacts. And potentially, when you look at the surface water runoff, what could be significant environmental impacts. Preserve Tiverton has genuine concerns. I hope I've articulated them, but some of our members would also like to speak. They will not be redundant. Stormwater impacts are a serious issue in Rhode Island today. Because we're a coastal community and because we have to address extreme weather conditions, even our existing regulations may not prepare us for what's to come. For those of you who haven't been to Jamestown lately, I commend you to a display that's on the front of Narragansett Bay in downtown Jamestown. It looks like nothing more than a snow fence. And it's about 40 feet from that main road that goes along the course of East Ferry in downtown Jamestown, for those of you who know it. It looks innocuous enough, but what it is the rack line, the high water mark for 2050. And when I tell you it's 40 feet away, it's quite a thing to look at. So, that's Jamestown. But Tiverton has its own special set of circumstances, not the least of which is that there is notable stormwater impacts from other sites in this area that are not addressed by the current stormwater plan. I'll also suggest in closing that where traffic congestion would be created or aggravated, that is, existing conditions, This is contrary to the public welfare and is a valid ground to deny relief. That's our common law. In due course, I'll cite to the relevant case law. But for now, I would respectfully suggest and ask that you not give this an affirmative determination or an affirmative recommendation to the zoning board. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Benson. It's my understanding that the applicant and the team representing the applicant who are here tonight would prefer to simply listen to questions and comments and concerns from the general public, from board members, and from Preserve Tiverton, and then respond at a later date. Do I have that right, Mr. Stoltzman? Or would you like to?
Yes, sir, you have that correct. We will respond to all of the questions. I would just note for the record, we've just received a copy of the TRC draft minutes.
Right.
And just tonight received the memorandum that apparently others had received earlier, which is fine. We just need time to review it and be able to respond. But everything that was requested or is asked, we will respond to either by formal documentation or a reason why we don't think it's either relevant or cannot be responded to. But we very much respect council and Preserve Tiverton and the board, and so we will respond.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to call upon my colleagues on the planning board to ask if they have any further comments or questions that they would like to ask before we go into the public hearing. I don't see any at this time, so I would like to just take a minute to read emails that I have received that concern the Seasons Corner Market and gas station application. They've come into an email address for the chair of the planning board with request that copies be made available to other members of the planning board and also to the general public. So I believe Ed Rotella has a file. So I have received emails from Peter Mantagaza, Dick Mahoney, Ruth Isaacs, Anthony Sawyer, Barbara Rosen Gildenziel, Richard and Sammy Backman, Joan McNamara, Colleen Bashajian, Lisa Carruthers, Lisa and Mark Carruthers, Mary Thompson, Deborah Gee, Marge Fuller, Brian Traeger, Linda Homanoff, Ron Marsh, Gail Lawrence, Ed and Barbara Lamagna, Maureen Morrow, Susan Anderson, Robert Niles, Dave and Terry Lineberry, Ginger Lacey, Patty Horan, Jay Lilly, John Piesick, Kelly Santos, Beverly Chase, Joanna Ross, and Jim Forrest. Apologies if I've mispronounced any of those surnames. Yes, that is not the speakers list I just read. That is, in fact, people who have sent me communications that are now available to the general public through the planning office. So now, I would like to go to public comments, and I'd like to remind everybody to enunciate their names very carefully so that the court reporter, the stenographer we have with us tonight, and also the person taking minutes for the planning board can hear. So speak clearly and slowly. And please keep your comments as brief as possible, because I see an awful lot of people in the audience, and although we're going to continue this public hearing, probably to our September 13 meeting. Nevertheless, I'd like to hear from as many people tonight as possible, and I think the applicant would as well. So having said that, I'd like to call on Patricia Santos, the first name on our public comment speaker sign-up sheet.
Thank you. Good evening.
Please speak into the microphone.
Thank you. Good evening. I am here tonight because all of the things that you have heard about that are concerning people about this application are what I live with. I live directly across from the property that has been discussed. I have been a member of the community of Tiverton for the last 23 years. I'm fortunate to be here tonight. I'm here because my neighbor came over and spoke to me and said, did you get your certified mail letter? I said, what letter? I didn't get a letter. And he said, yeah, you should have gotten a letter. I thought, okay, well, I'll go down to town hall and find out what happened, which I did. And I was told that the letter was sent and it came back, and that they didn't have my house number for the letter. I did get the letter through email because I requested having one. So from that perspective, I will continue. I am here tonight because this is not the first time that we have expressed our concern about the traffic pattern on Main Road. We have contacted the community police and we have contacted the state of Rhode Island about what we have seen happening on Main Road. Most often, people travel too fast. Depending upon what their situation is, they're not very patient. There have been accidents there. We have observed them. They're not pretty. That's a concern. The second thing that I want to go on and tell you about this evening is that the intersection is used by our first responders often. I am right there. I hear them go by. I see them go by. I see them try to go by. So I am talking with firsthand experience. Additional traffic through there happen to be our school bus children, and now traffic to the newly opened daycare center right up the road. Also, people are coming to Tiverton who have never been here before. This whole intersection is very new to them. And sometimes it's very frightening to see people do U-turns there because they're off track. I'm having work done at my home, and a person who was traveling up Schooner Drive actually stopped his car, got out of it, and came over and spoke to the gentlemen who were doing the work and said, "Thank you so much for making this intersection easier to handle." First-hand information. I held an event at my home in October, and I was very concerned about the traffic pattern through there. It was being held on a Saturday, a weekend, which most often brings more traffic, and still tourist season. So I went to the police and said to them, this is my concern. I would like to have police presence there during the situation. They were terrific. They came down and they were a police presence. There were no accidents that happened because of that event. It was a great relief to me to see that that's how that occurred. So this situation is something that I watch and see daily. And I am very pleased to hear the focus that has come for safety, because it is such a critical part of being able to live in this community and feel comfortable. It is something that I have experienced, but I have also experienced very challenging situations on that intersection. And one of the things I didn't hear mentioned, which happens an awful lot right now, are the huge trucks that are doing work down through the condos and down in that area. These giant trucks travel through that area all day long, in and out. And if you are coming down Main Road and one of those trucks is planning to turn onto Main Road, you very well would like to know about that. And that's not always something that can happen easily. So safety is a major, major concern over there in this part of the world. And I'm glad to hear the focus of it here tonight. I think it is incredibly critical. It is summer. People are walking there, biking there, motorcycles are coming through there. All of that is happening through that intersection. And the fact that it needs to be safe is a responsibility of all of us. So I wanted to bring that up and mention it. I know that I have observed in the 23 years that I have been a resident, the careful and attentive attention that the planning board gives to things that are brought to their attention that they would like to have part of Tiverton. This is a very special community. I hope that they will continue to insist that anyone who becomes part of the community is attentive to the fact that safety and quality of life is a top priority in this community, and I would like to keep it that way. I am not in favor of this proposal. Thank you for your time.
I had a question.
And so I'd like to call on Michael Dow, our second speaker. We'll have a chance to ask questions.
No, just give the address. Was she on Main Road?
Yes, she can.
Okay, I didn't hear.
Yes, it's Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board, for
So
allowing
Michael Dow.
the public to speak tonight. My name is Michael Dow, D-O-W. For the past 10 or 12 years, I've lived at the village of Mount Hope and have found it very enjoyable living there. The community is wonderful. I also work in healthcare. I work at the Miriam Hospital in Providence in critical care, and so for all of my career in medicine, I've been concerned about the well-being of people. And I think this proposal impacts very severely on the well-being of people. So I'd like to take a few minutes to share my thoughts with you and with the public. In thinking about this proposed development and in planning for this meeting, I read the Tiverton Comprehensive Community Plan. We owe our thanks and respect to those town leaders and the administrators who developed this thoughtful and thorough plan. Reading this work, I reflected upon and was affected by the language used throughout to characterize our town and our communities. You use the words charming and scenic, historic with open spaces and sparkling waterways, forested and wooded areas, and not least, character. Our town, our town's people, our way of living our lives has a unique character. If you are not familiar with the plan I speak of, let me briefly quote from its pages. The location of the town, its historical development, and the quality of its natural features are unique factors in Tiverton that should be protected. The protection of the town's natural and historic features is crucial to retaining the character of the community. The location of the town, its historical development, and the quality of its natural features are unique factors of Tiverton. Rural character may be difficult to divine, but it is unequivocally clear that people in Tiverton want to keep it. The rural character of Tiverton is a combination of many small town things that makes it charming. Its open land, extensive forest cover, scenic views, country lanes, stone walls, streams and wetlands, and historic properties contribute to the culture, the heritage, and the general character of Tiverton. Many other qualities are associated with country life. They disappear in sprawling, unplanned suburban development. Contextual development is the idea that development should be compatible with and closely match the existing historic and architectural fabric. This should be encouraged in all areas of town. That's from your plan. Now let's turn our attention to the seasons. We who live in the Northeast know and cherish our seasons. Winter can bring a perfect white, untrammeled snow over the land. There is an almost mystical quiet that falls with the snow. Spring brings local and migrating birds, a profusion of color from wildflowers and budding trees. In summer, those trees give shade and cover on hot days, and those wooded lands absorb the water from thunderstorms, preventing runoff into our beautiful waterways. By the way, I swim in the Sconnet River. Autumn's flashing eyes and fancy colors and changing moods presage something darker to come. Is the all-night gas mart to be our next season? Is it a flim-flam sophomoric ploy to call the gas and chip smart seasons? Or is it a cynical cloaking of a direct assault on nature with a word evocative of natural rhythms? Not seasons. What we get instead is a perennial industrial strength overbuilt blight. Month after month, year after year, more light pollution. Light trespasses into your neighborhoods and into your bedrooms. Glare and other illumination with its hazardous effects on plants and animals. More menacing traffic, congestion, and accidents constraining our movement and increasing our insurance costs. More unwelcome noise. We get tanker trucks filled with gas, themselves belching fumes and causing no small amount of irritation or danger to life, to limb, to property. We get what's known as ratcheting, brighter lights begetting brighter lights, blocking out the night sky, more noise begetting more noise. We get stained and polluted land. We get cancer-causing benzene in our land and water, gas fumes in our air, and runoff from paved over earth. These pains and costs are borne by you and me, the public, while the developer enjoys his private profits. But that is not all we get. We get crime. According to a study from the University of Arizona, the ASU Center for Problem-Oriented Policing, 6% of robberies occur at convenience stores. Ask yourself, who is out at 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning? Is it the responsible, hardworking mother or father? Why would we wish to invite crime into our neighborhood with an all-night gas mart? The all-night gas mart is a beacon to someone with a weapon and criminal intent. And what of our local police officers? Would you, if given the choice, rather help them by not inviting more crime into our community? And what about the safety of the man or woman scratching out a living, working late at the all-night gas mart? Convenience store employees suffer from high rates of homicide, second only to taxi drivers. And those living in neighborhoods bordering this gaseous blight. Will you now stockpile weapons in your homes to protect yourselves? What of the young grandchild who finds the loaded, unsecured gun and kills himself or another child? Ask yourselves, will the all-night gas mart provide more safety for you and your family? remember this too. The people representing this development company are handsomely paid to win and to get what they want. They will present information that is sliced and diced myriad ways to gain an outside advantage. And they need not be constrained by the truth, but what could be expected of men with no higher purposes than money and profits. I will tell you, public, our truth-seeking and focus should be on what makes our lives more pleasurable, more charmed by beauty and nature, less stressful, and safer. Our environment affects our moods, our minds, our health, and our actions when alone and with others. Consider this when building a habitable community. There is no need at all for an all-night gas mark. I do not give my consent, and I trust your character will dictate withholding yours. Rather, we can stand against the developers' rapacious appetite for profit and for ravaging our land. We can stand together now and throughout the seasons to protect and preserve our quality of life and the character of our town and that of our town's people. I thank you for your time and your very kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Dow. And while we're waiting for Susan Benish is the next speaker, while we're waiting for her to come up to the podium, I would like to just very respectfully request that speakers please be as brief and concise as you possibly can for the benefit of other people who would also like to be heard. We have quite a long list. I'd like to just remind you that you have the opportunity, if you have a lot of information that would help the board make findings of fact, you can simply put that in writing, send it to Ed Rotella or myself, and we'll get it out to everybody on the board. And then in that way, all you need to do tonight is just briefly summarize the key points. The rest would be in writing and will be distributed and paid attention to. Having said that, Mrs. Benish.
I'm Susan Benish, and I have lived in Tiverton for 44 years this month, and I've grown very fond of this town. I live on Brackett Avenue, and like I do not have an eloquent speech like Dr. Dow, but I'm very concerned. I do not want to have an all-night gas station and convenience store blighting Tiverton. We don't want to turn Main Road into Medicom Avenue or go on into Portsmouth, and there are some 24-hour stations, and it's spoiling the rural life of Portsmouth. Do we want that to happen in Tiverton? Do we want to see it? The beauty of Tiverton are the trees, the birds, the water, and we need to keep it pristine for future generations. If the land is raped for development and you pave over it, what's going to happen to the future? I live up north on Brackett Avenue, but how about the traffic getting onto the highway, the school buses, the work traffic, children? Where's their safety going to be if we have a convenience store? And what's going to happen? And a gas station open 24 hours a day. The neon signage is a blight. How about the people who live in that area? I live about less than 2 miles from it and up high. I won't see this, but I feel very badly for all the residents there. Another question of mine, how about the small businesses, the small convenience stores, the small gas stations, and other small businesses? How are they going to, small restaurants, how are they going to be affected by all this traffic? What's going to happen to our town? I haven't heard anything from Seasons saying that they would increase our police department, the fire department, our ambulance services. No mention is made of what they are going to contribute to the town of Tiverton for our way of life. Their interest is padding their pocketbooks. Please do not give approval to this convenience store. Thank you very much for permitting me to speak.
Our next speaker is Gary Lieb, followed by Barbara Martin. If anybody has their name on the list and would like to come forward, it might move things forward a little more quickly if we had the speakers closer to the mic. So, having said that, Mr. Lieb.
I'll be short, 2 minutes or less. I live in the Robert Gray neighborhood across from Humphrey Store. I go down past this intersection 2 times a day, 5 days a week, or more often. And before I moved here, I lived across from a gas station in Bristol on Hope Street. And that station had 1,000 feet of clear view north and 2,000 feet of clear view south in a straight line. Despite that, there was at least 1 serious accident a year and 3 or 4 minor accidents of crashes. With major accidents, the ambulances came running. Once or twice I saw people laying on the pavement. So here, where you've got a curve in the road and you've got Souza Street across, and I've tried going into Souza Street coming from the north or the south. It's a wonderful adventure. And with the gasoline station, it'll be more exciting. So please, I ask you not to approve this for the sake of the safety of the people here in Tiverton who drive Main Street. Thank you.
Thank you. How do you pronounce this?
Calabrese.
So we have Barbara Martin, and then after that, Kathy Calabrese.
Louise Durfee didn't have the opportunity to sign in, so I'm going to let her take my time, if that's okay.
Well, I will ask people who didn't have the opportunity to sign if anybody else has comments. So
okay,
you can both speak.
Well, I'm going to let Louise take my time for the moment. Okay.
So our next speaker is Louise Durfee.
Yes. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Barbara. I have here a petition of 45 signatures that Barbara was going to present to the board, all of them opposed to Seasons development. But I would have a few words myself. And you know, first of all, I appreciate the planning board and its history of helping to preserve the town and its adherence to the comprehensive plan. And before you, it's hard to imagine a worse site for the Seasons development than the one they are proposing. Let's just look at what it does. And some of this is repetitive. But it plunks down in the middle of a residential area, this 24-hour market, 8 gasoline pumps, and it's very close to one of the few historic districts in the town. That should disqualify it as it is. And as other speakers have pointed out, it creates lighting that will illuminate the neighboring houses on a 24-hour basis. Imagine that. You never get your lights turned off. And finally, not finally, but it actually exacerbates a very dangerous intersection to make it not only treacherous, but one that puts your life at risk. It's hard to imagine how a car coming up Schooner Drive, as we all have done, either turning north or turning south, and now you find cars coming up Schooner Drive, they'll get out almost as close as they can to being hit. But now you're going to be looking up Schooner Drive, and you have not only north, south, but exit cars coming in and out of Main Road from Seasons and from Souza Road as well. Where do your eyes go? It is probably one of the worst sights for this proposal that you could imagine. All you can say is, well, so much for public safety if this goes through. But I have enough confidence in your board to believe that these factors are very important. The Seasons development, despite their words, completely ignores the comprehensive plan which the town has adopted. And for most people, we talk about the comprehensive plan. But the comprehensive plan just didn't evolve overnight by a draftsperson sitting at the town hall. It goes through a process, a long process with charrettes, focus groups, to get a sense of community and what they will approve and not approve. And implicit in each section of that comprehensive plan is the guide that orderly growth in the town must preserve the town's rural, historic, and small town character. And finally, it states very eloquently, residents can welcome development that can be woven into the character of the community, but they will oppose development that will erase it. The Seasons development erases part of the character of this town. And when it does so, it is in violation of the comprehensive plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Kathy Calabrese, and then after that, Ron Marsh and Tracy Hayward.
Hi, I'm Kathy Calabrese. I live at Ocean View Avenue in Tiverton. I've been there for 41 and a half years, when it was a beautiful place to live until Ford Farm became McMansions, and now we have all sorts of critters all over the neighborhood, and that's what's going to happen down on Souza when you take down all the trees in the forest. But the worst thing there is the traffic, and I have a friend that was involved in a very serious crash there, and she was very severely injured. And I have come up Schooner Drive after we've gone to the boathouse, my husband and I, and getting out of there is not easy. I think that there is got to be a better place to put this, but not on Souza Road. And what about the wetlands? VD has been unable to expand for years because of wetlands. So why all of a sudden are we even talking about this? I mean, VD has been here for decades, and now Seasons wants to come in, and it's like, oh, it's okay, VD can't build there, but we'll let Seasons come in. I'm opposed to this, but mostly because of the traffic and mostly because of the crime. In this little town of 15,000 plus people, do we really need a 24/7 convenience store, gas station, when there's one right over on Stafford Road? It's not far, just go over Eagleville, you'll find it. I just feel like North Tiverton has become a dumping ground over the last 40 years. And I understand that you didn't get your certified letter. I didn't get one when the gun range went on the corner of Haskins. I didn't get anything, and the 500 letters that supposedly went out, I don't know anybody that got one. But that's a lost cause now. But on Main Road, we already have 3 gas stations within 1.5 miles, 2 miles. We have 2 convenience stores, and we're only 2.5 miles from the Fall River line, where there's another convenience store and another gas station, and if you go down the hill, there's another gas station. This is unnecessary in a tiny town. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But the accidents is the big thing for me. The accidents and the crime is the big thing to me. We have enough traffic, and during school season, having these buses stop at almost every block backs the traffic up horrendously, and now we're going to have people coming in and out. What are there, 8 gas pumps? I mean, I just don't think it's necessary. I really don't. We have our nice small gas stations. They're open reasonable amounts of time to get your gas. If, nobody seems to worry about it in Little Compton or South Tiverton. If you run out of gas out there, it's a long walk to the nearest gas station. But anyway, I just don't think it's the right fit, and that's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak.
And our next speaker is Ron Marsh.
My name is Ron Marsh, sometimes pronounced Mash, but after all, this is Rhode Island. I live at 48 Four Rod Way. About 15 years ago, a major retailer wanted to build a big box store in Portsmouth at the corner of West Main Road and Union Street. Now, West Main Road carries 4 tight lanes of traffic and has no shoulders. I was concerned because I had a professional practice in Portsmouth, located on West Main Road. Now, most of us at one time or another have driven West Main between Middletown and Portsmouth, and maybe you've had the pleasure of doing it during rush hour. So you might be puzzled at how anyone would suggest that more traffic could fit on that constricted 4-lane road. You'd wonder how on earth the additional traffic associated with a big box store could avoid a collapse. Well, the Target Corporation didn't wonder at all. And just like our meeting today, Target, that was the company that wanted to build a store. They brought in their shock troop team to manage the facts. And they presented them to the town. Included in the corporation's forward guard were engineers who spread out their estimates and their calculations about how beneficial a big box store would be at that location, and how it wouldn't have any adverse effects on traffic. Now, Portsmouth residents saw things a little differently. They suspected the location would be one of the worst sites imaginable for a big box store, and they said so. For a while, the debate raged between the town residents and the corporation. The corporation doubled down on the idea, claiming their engineers knew better. Citizens who came to question and object, they just didn't get it. We're the experts at this, and those folks, well, they're just residents. As I was taking this in, it suddenly hit me that the professionals, the attorneys and the engineers that the corporation brought in would never present any but good numbers for themselves. It hit me that if you were a traffic engineer and reached a different conclusion, well, you'd be working somewhere else. You would be replaced on the team with a different engineer with numbers that fit. And so what are we doing here today? As I view it, we're like two teams squaring off. In this corner, Team Colbea Enterprises LLC, represented by these honorable gentlemen. And out here, Team Tiverton, represented by you and me. One distinct difference between our two teams is that presumably each of us lives in this town. And the other team lives in other towns. Do I stand corrected? Do any of you folks actually reside in Tiverton, Rhode Island? Well, what does each team stand to gain or lose in this game? Let's say Team Tiverton loses. We lose something called quality of life in a sizable area of town. Traffic jams, litter, 24-hour light pollution, and runoff from an asphalt lot that previously was field and woodland. But what if Team Colbea Enterprises LLC loses? Well, they don't really lose anything. They go home, maybe to plan a season's market in somebody else's unspoiled backyard. And what if Team Tiverton wins? Well, nothing changes. We don't gain anything tangible. We continue to view sumac and oak and holly and wildflowers when we drive past that corner. And finally, what if Team Colbea Corporation LLC wins? Well, they win an awful lot of money. More money than most of us have ever seen in one place at one time. Money collected from a new season's market built in a National Historic Register district here in Tiverton. Well, speaking of Portsmouth and the proposed Target store, it was defeated. Team Portsmouth won. Let's follow their example. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. And so our next speaker is Tracy Haywood, and after that, Steve Maloney.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Haywood. I live on 21 Souza Road. I'll be very polite and say I am opposed to having this monstrosity built on the corner of Souza and Main Road. My concerns are pollution, air pollution from cars idling, stopping and starting, cars idling at the pumps, cars idling at the drive-thru. I also have concern about the traffic, as everyone else did as well. Especially, my driveway right now is almost like a kind of turnaround for a lot of people who get lost. I can't imagine people backing in, turning around in my driveway, and also neighbors who may not be here tonight, I do not know, on 17 Souza Road as well. Also concerned about the mention of the pedestrian-friendly area. Now, I've walked up and down Souza Road, and that, let me tell you, is a death-defying act because there is no sidewalk anymore. There never was, and the trees or what have you are closing in so that the little white lines that are on the side of the road, the traffic is, they've got to be right up against it. And I have to jump into the trees, which I've done that, to avoid being hit, because people like to drive very fast up and down Souza Road. And I believe there's some sort of goal that when you're turning on from Main onto Souza, the goal is to be driving about 50 miles an hour by the time you get to my driveway. And I am not that far from Main Road at all. I can see that more accidents happening, more pollution happening because of more traffic. I can see more angry people causing more accidents because they're a little ticked off having to wait for people. I don't think it would be a very good idea to have this built in that particular area. Also, as it was pointed out by at least one other lady, I believe, We have 3 gas stations that are within about a mile, mile and a half up on Main Road. And I think the 3 of those stations, they're not allowed to stay open past like 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. I'm not sure of the exact time. But maybe one thing you could look into is maybe just extending the hours of those gas stations, maybe till 11 o'clock, since I don't see much of a reason why we have to have a 24-hour anything in Tiverton. We're a small rural community. If I wanted to be able to roll out of bed at 3 a.m. because I was hungry for a Snickers and walk across the street, I'd go live in Fall River. I'd go live in a bigger city where that's, you can do that kind of thing. I don't want that. I like to have a little privacy, a little quiet, which someone also had brought up about trucks driving up and down and all over the place due to maybe working down Schooner Drive. Trucks travel on Souza Road more than they ever have. I've lived at that address for 59 years and a couple of months. And I just, God bless you, and I just can't foresee, I just can't see this happening, not to this community. I mean, not because of the fact that I live right there, though that does have a heck of an impact, because let me tell you, if this friggin' thing goes up, I'm moving out of this town faster than you know what. I will not live across from something like that. My apologies. If I wanted to live somewhere like that, like I said, I live in Fall River. I live in Providence. I live in a bigger city that has that kind of situation. Finally, just it's the noise pollution, the light pollution. When, and I don't know the name of it, I apologize, but when the oil refinery was there, my parents had a heck of a time with the lighting from that. I don't think they went to court over it, but it was finally settled. They had to reduce their lighting finally. It glared right into their bedroom. I really don't want the light glaring into my bedroom. I like to sleep a little bit, once in a while. Also, the noise pollution, again, from, upset people honking their little horns and just the trucks coming in and out, delivery trucks, what have you. So again, as I said, I'm opposed to this, to seasons being built there, and I just hope that you take all that into consideration and everything that everybody has been saying. These are the people who live here. These are the people who want to have this to be a nice, respectable, quiet community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. Our next speaker is Steve, I think it's Maloney. It's 1049 Main Road. And then after that, Carol Herman. And after that, Kim Hanna.
How you doing?
Did I get your name wrong?
Steve Money, 1049 Main Road. I live across the street from this potential eyesore. The elevation of this is going to be so high, I'll be looking at the canopy lights, the fluorescent ones. The traffic is so bad over there. When I take the kid to school in the morning, it's a 1 to 5 minute wait just to get out of my driveway. It's like a funeral procession or a parade every day. So if you don't think there's a 7th light going in, you're mistaken. That traffic study is flawed. This makes no sense at all. There's so many animals that come through my yard from there. And you got that big sewer pipe that they dump sewage in all the time out of the big trucks. That hasn't even been discussed at all. It's just, it's not right for the town. Neon lights, the driveway right there, I don't know. The doctor had it right. I can't say anything better than him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol Herman. I live on Main Road, a short distance south of the main Souza Road intersection. I'm going to address 3 different topics. The first one is that proposed location. Article 10, Section 5 of Tiverton zoning ordinance states, no gasoline filling station or service station shall be located less than 1,500 feet from the premises of any church, school, hospital, park, or playground. The parcel Colbea proposes to build a gas station and convenience store on is 1, within 1,500 feet of Little Willow Daycare and Preschool, which includes an outdoor play area. 2, within 1,500 feet of the park included in the abutting Oxford Development Project plans. And 3, within 1,500 feet of 2 outdoor play spaces planned for the Tiverton Heights project. The Colbea gas station project is therefore prohibited in the proposed location. And as backup documentation, I'm going to leave with you screenshots from Little Willow's website showing that children have 2 hours of outside play scheduled daily, 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon. Their note that they are planning to install natural outdoor play equipment, but in the meantime, they have posted on their public Facebook page pictures of happy children playing outside currently, and so I have those. I also have a partial picture of the Oxford development with that overlook park and gazebo, as they have dubbed it. That, by the way, is within 200 feet of the proposed gas station. And then also the Tiverton Heights west phase, the play spaces in that west phase are easily within the 1,500 buffer zone. And finally, I have a GIS map showing the 1,500-foot radius around the Colbea parcel with identifiers for the Little Willow lot, the Oxford development lot, and the Tiverton Heights development lot. The next topic I'd like to talk about are the health risks of gas stations to nearby residents, since I will be one. Numerous studies have shown the dangers of having a gas station in close proximity to homes. A gas station in the location proposed by Colbea would clearly pose a nuisance and health hazard to the many nearby residents and therefore should not be permitted. A number of compounds injurious to human health are released from gas stations during vehicle fueling and from underground storage tank vents. These include benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. Benzene is the most dangerous. It was noted by Dr. Dow. Adverse health effects of benzene include nausea, cancer, anemia, increased susceptibility to infections, and low birth weight. According to the World Health Organization guidelines, there is no safe indoor level for benzene. And this is an issue because nearby homes have detectable levels of benzene when they are situated near gas stations. A 2001 study noted ambient benzene levels of 1.9 parts per billion in houses up to 320 feet, which is 100 meters from a service station. That would include my home. A 2004 study documented a significant relationship between childhood leukemia and living near a gas station. A 2010 study showed elevated air pollution within 100 meters, 328 feet of a gas station, and a 2012 study found that air quality was significantly degraded up to 150 meters or almost 500 feet from gas stations. It's important to note that the most common control measures that gas stations will claim help mitigate those issues are not effective. A study from February 2020 found that 88% of vehicles monitored released vapors during refueling despite the presence of onboard refueling vapor recovery systems. Those are the efforts to mitigate. And a 2021 study concluded that the greater threat from these released vapors was not to those people pumping gas, because they drive away, but to nearby residents. Researchers noted the cumulative effect of benzene released during fueling and from underground storage tank vents remains a cause for concern for those living, working, or learning nearby, those of us who spend significant amounts of time indoors in the surrounding neighborhoods. As a homeowner whose property is within 350 feet of the proposed Colbea gas station, I urge you to protect my health and my neighbor's health by not allowing construction of the project. Finally, I have just an article that I will leave with you. It covers the phasing out of gasoline-powered cars and the rise of electric vehicles. There's a nice chart showing declining gasoline consumption in the United States and the decline projected over the next 10 to 15 years. The number of gas stations in the US has already declined by about 20% in the last 20 years, and Boston Consulting Group has forecast that as many as 80% of gas stations could be unprofitable by 2035. So the best course would not be to add a huge gas station in an area that already has 3 existing smaller stations, but to support our local small businesses. We will be left without a large corner property that will become merely blight, and we will not be left with oversized underground storage tanks that we will have to deal with. The existing gas stations, as I said, are smaller, so they pose less of a health risk, and they do not operate 24 hours a day. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. So our next speaker lives at 35 Mainsail Drive. I couldn't quite make out the name. And then the speaker after that would be Kim Hanna. And the speaker after that would be Deborah Gee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I know your first name is Robert.
It's Robert Niles. I'm at 35 Mainsail Drive.
So that's Niles.
Correct. Yep. I did send a couple of letters in, so I'll not rehash all of that in the emphasis of brevity here tonight. Just a couple of things that I want to present on behalf of the villages of Mount Hope Bay. We have 150 signatures of people in our community that are definitely against the development for all the reasons you've already heard tonight. So I'd like to...
Thank you. The staff will take that.
I would like to add just a little bit on the traffic, not that you haven't heard enough about it tonight, but I want to give you another little different look at it. So I agree with all of the previous people who spoke about the survey and the fact that it was done at the wrong time. It was done during COVID. It was done, for a very short period of time, and that it certainly doesn't represent what we have there. I did go by the Four Seasons over in Fall River today. And while I was there, I watched for a while, and I watched them take some deliveries, and the Polar Springs water truck shows up. The landscaper shows up. There's no room inside the facility, so he parked on what would be Village Road. There's a lot of goofy stuff going on there. Plus, all the other Four Seasons are in places like Route 6 and Seekonk. They're down by Market Basket. They're on roads that have 2 lanes going both ways, right? So if you have any traffic issues, you have a chance to pull over, hold up the traffic, and some people can still get by. You don't have that here. So picture cars coming north on Main Road, pulling out of Schooner Drive, and now they want to take a right and go up Souza. Typically, they would just hit the gas pedal and say, "Thank God I'm out of here," and they'd head towards Vitti. Now they might go 50 feet and stop, because there's traffic jammed up trying to take a left and go into the market. So now you've got somebody that takes an initial turn on Souza Road, and he can't go anywhere because the traffic's backed up, and now everybody's backing up into the intersection that way. The north, so what they have, they have an entry that takes you into the back by where you would pick up the, you buy your coffee or whatnot around the back. They have another entrance that's, I don't know, 50 feet north of Schooner Drive that people are going to try to shoot from Schooner over into or take a quick right from. Then north of that is kind of the exit for all the flow that comes out of there. So if they're coming out of there and they take a right going north, that's bad enough. But if, God forbid, somebody's going to come out of there and take a left, they've got no chance. They've got to cross the northbound traffic, and as soon as they hit their gas pedal and scoot across the traffic, somebody else is pulling out of Schooner Drive going up Souza or going the other way, and they don't even know they're there because they just pulled out from a different direction. So you got to look at all the deliveries, everything that's going on there, and the traffic flow in and out of all these little places, not just how many cars are coming, which is also, in my opinion, flawed. So,
thank you, Mr. Niles. Kim Hanna is our next speaker, and after that, Deborah Gee, and after that, Judith Cutler.
Hi, I'm Kim Hanna. I live at the village at Mount Hope Bay and have been there for 15 years. I think that the traffic things we deal with getting out of the village at Mount Hope Bay, there's a north entrance and then there's the Schooner Drive entrance. And I and many of the people who live at the village avoid the Schooner Drive whenever we can, because getting out of there, as Bob actually described, you go out and it's a curve and there's a limited sight distance, and now in addition to having to look that way and to the right and straight across, you're going to have a couple of other entrances for traffic there. So I and many of the other people who live at the village prefer to go to the north entrance because that's a fairly easy entrance. So, and safer, I think. So just for those of us who live there, that's just an observation and how it affects us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Gee, and I live at 15 Evans Avenue in Tiverton, Rhode Island. I'm here to stand after people who have already spoken and have all the same thoughts that I have had. I also usually try to submit a letter ahead of time to make my views heard. I am concerned about and have spoken or have listed all the major issues that have been spoken about today, which are things like the traffic issues and intersection issues, health and safety issues, accidents, light pollution, water pollution, storm runoff, home value, which I consider very important to me because I would love to live in Tiverton till I pass away, and I have a beautiful home that I would like to continue to enjoy. But I want to center on just one thing and elaborate just a teeny bit on it. I was a teacher for 42 years. I know children very well. You have, as part of this whole development, and I think it needs to be brought into the conversation, if you have a gas station and mini mart that's 24 hours, and then you have, and I added it up, 373 units, if you have all those developments come into that same area, we're talking not only that many units, but at least everybody needs a car because we don't have public transportation here in town. So you're going to have at least that many added cars in that area that are coming out onto Main Road or out onto Fish Road, or out onto Souza Road, and Souza Road to Main Road, and so on. And I agree with everybody that has spoken that at this point, those, we have a narrow road, which has no way of being widened. I find it difficult, I live on Evans, and I find it difficult to get out onto Main Road. And I agree that people drive too fast. When they come up around the corner, I could have looked from down near the water. I could have checked coming off of 24. That one traffic light is not sufficient if they're coming to go south. So I getting to all the things that I want to enjoy that belong to Tiverton, the supermarket, the CVS store, etc. I don't want to go out of Tiverton. I want to support Tiverton. I live here in Tiverton. But as far as students and a big population that's going to be added if you combine all these things together, you've got a gas station that I consider a city gas station and mini mark. I'm not looking forward to having anybody on the north side of town have to deal with that, or the south side of town, but I think we should be at least equalized. And if you're going to big things, they could also go on the south end of town. But I think we want the kind of life we have right now, the nice neighborhoods and the benefits of living in a nice community, a smaller community. I moved here for that reason. But if you have a 24/7 gas station, mini mart, your population that's going to get around there is not just vehicles, but it's going to be foot traffic. And it's going to be young foot traffic, because a lot of times those are the kind of people that you might see at 2 o'clock in the morning out. When we first had the pandemic, I saw kids that were supposed to be in school, at home in school, sitting on the stone wall that surrounds the I'm looking at when you do what you're going to be doing, where you're now going to have this big, densely populated area with 3 developments and now a gas station. It just seems like it's not us. It shouldn't be us. We want to have the kind of life that we're living. And I don't want it to be in another part of Tiverton, but I would suggest you look at another part of Tiverton, because at least maybe there's other roads that are wider that might assist. I thank the people that have already spoken. They hit on so many things that I wanted to hit on, and I thank you for listening to me, and I hope you listen to the other people in this community, because I think that we really, really, really do not want 3 developments and a gas station and a mini mart. We want the kind of life we have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Judith Cutler. I live at Watermark Drive in Tiverton. And I thank you for your patience, and I will try and be very brief. The people who have spoken before have mentioned many, many issues that I myself feel strongly about. But what I'd like to focus my comments tonight is the inconsistency of this project with both the town's community comprehensive plan and, more importantly, your zoning. I note in your zoning ordinance that gasoline filling stations of this type, or any type, are only allowed in the general commercial district and in the highway commercial district. And I suggest to you that the 2 districts have very different purposes, and they're articulated in the zoning ordinance such that, as you know, the general district is community service and retail business oriented, whereas the highway commercial district, which is up on the Fish Road end of things at the Route 24 intersection, is the district that's focused on businesses that are regionally based service businesses, and rely upon easy access for vehicular access. So you've got Seasons 4 is exactly that type of business, not a community-based business. I think this is the very edge of that district, and it is surrounded, as has been noted by several people, by all residential developments. The impacts will be absolutely astounding. This is not consistent with your community plan. It is not consistent with preserving the character of the community in any way, shape, or form. And I note to you that what is going to be happening is that people who are trying to get to this service station are not the local people. As has been mentioned, we have 3 gas stations on Main Road within a very short distance. The people who will be coming here will be travelers who are traveling on Route 24, or they'll be the people who are parking at the commuter parking lot. And they will be coming down Souza Road, and they will be going into this station, and they will, as many people have mentioned, you will have many conflicting traffic patterns and intersections in that area. It will be dangerous. It will be unnecessarily dangerous. And I suggest to you that there is no conditions that you can possibly come up with that can alter this situation, that can make it compatible with the neighborhood, that can eliminate many of the adverse impacts that have been described here, or even mitigate them to a reasonable amount, or make it compatible with the overall character of the community. And I ask you to reject this project. This business needs to find another location. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that Judith Cutler was the last speaker to sign up on the speaker sign-up sheet, but I'd like to now ask if there's anybody else in the audience who didn't get an opportunity to sign or didn't even notice that we had a speaker sign-up sheet and who would like to make brief comments now. And again, if that's so, please state your name and your address.
Hi, I'm sorry I interrupted you before. I'm very sorry. My name is Celeste Ferrendo Canfield. I live in Tiverton.
Could you please spell your last name?
Yes, it's F as in Frank, E-R-E-N-D-O hyphen Canfield, C-A-N-F-I-E-L-D.
Thank you.
Thank you. First, I wanted to thank you, all of you who stopped the mall from happening in this town. We all thank you, and I respect you. I just wanted to say that people purchase houses in good faith in this town, in residential areas, in good faith that they will remain residential areas. And I would feel very betrayed if someone built this monstrosity near my home when I was promised that this was going to be a residential area. Everyone else has covered everything else I might have said, so I just wanted to point out that I'm very concerned for the small businesses who have served this town for so long, who have paid their taxes loyally for all of those years, and will certainly be affected adversely by this huge undertaking by millionaires, when I'm sure that all of these small businesses are not millionaires and are probably just getting by. And we have to show some loyalty to them. And it's completely unnecessary, this undertaking that I find is, again, a big city kind of. I come from New York and New Jersey. I lived in both. I moved here to get away from that. So please, 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 you did the right thing with the mall. Don't let this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the general public who would like to say a word or two? And I see somebody coming forward. And so, sir, if you just give us your name slowly and clearly and your address.
Cody Braz, B-R-A-Z, and I live at 1359 Crandall Road in Tiverton. So everybody has pretty much said their keep about the traffic, but the one thing that nobody has brought forth is the fact that there is a weight restriction on Fish Road on the bridge that is 6,000 pounds. My pickup truck that I drive every day is 7,000 pounds dry. You have these trucks coming out of J.H. Lynch, site ready on Eagleville Road. Oh, sorry. I'm a bit nervous. They on average are coming out of these pits loaded anywhere from 18,000 to 100,000 pounds. They are restricted to what roads they can drive on, being 24 to get onto Main Road and Souza Road. So you have an uptick in very large trucks coming up and down Souza Road because they are restricted going down Fish Road. There is no estimated date as to when they are going to fix that said bridge on Fish Road. I just so happened to look at the RIDOT page to see if there was any information regarding it, and there is not. So, for the said future, we are going to have all of these trucks, oil trucks, dump trucks, local landscapers coming up and down Main Road, whether they're going to North Tiverton, South Tiverton, whatever they are, wherever direction they're going, they are restricted to what roads they are going to be able to travel on. Souza Road is one of those roads. And as we all know, Souza Road is very treacherous. I own a small landscaping business in town. I'm restricted to drive up and down Souza Road all the time. I have to drive 25 miles an hour in my dump truck, or I feel like the wheels are going to fall off of it. So, there are major traffic issues at that intersection. I have to wait consistently 10 minutes at a minimum to be able to pull out whether I'm going to North Tiverton or whether I'm going south towards Little Compton. So that is my piece. I thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Gail Lawrence, Lawrence. I live at 108 Long Pasture Way in Tiverton. I have a letter which I will place in the record. I guess I'm going to skip most of my letter in the interest of time, and also for the fact that these very committed, dedicated fellow citizens and residents of our community have spoken so eloquently about why we care about Tiverton, and we want to keep the Tiverton that we all know and love. This gas station, when I saw it in the paper, in the Secundit paper, I thought, oh my, that's so incompatible with anything that is in this town or should be in this town. And one thing that I think was only briefly mentioned by the attorney, but is a deep concern of mine, is the issue of climate change. And I'm going to read the paragraphs that I wrote earlier, just because I think that's a point that we should take into consideration as we view the future, both of our town and of our planet. I probably can't do this. With the impacts of climate change already being felt, in Rhode Island and in Tiverton, we should not be ignoring the evidence, the mounting evidence before us. Permitting construction of a new gas station where there are already many within our town only encourages continued reliance on fossil fuels, which makes no sense now or in the future. As a community, we should assume a leadership role and make every effort to discourage continued heavy reliance on those polluting fuels which are contributing to global warming and are already causing adverse impacts on our state and our planet. My closing paragraph, other paragraphs say that yes, it'll disrupt people, yes, there'll be pollution, I concur. Not only would the services of the season's business be redundant and have many negative impacts on the community nearby and throughout our town, but also it is fundamentally a misfit for Tiverton. It does nothing to improve the quality of life or health and safety of our community. Instead, it would detract and damage our town. Why would we jeopardize the quality of life our community cherishes and the safety of our residents only to serve the interests of this corporation? I am deeply concerned about all the impacts that have been mentioned this evening of this project on the town and on its residents. In my view, it is hardly in the best interest of Tiverton to have a seasoned store anywhere in our town. I oppose it, and I urge you to reject this proposal without any hesitation. I want to thank you for your service, for your dedication, and for the hours you invest in caring for this community.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to make a brief comment? And give us your name and address, please.
Hi, how are you? My name is Michelle Deasy, D-E-A-S-Y. I live at 1024 Main Road, so I'm the house that's on that same side. And I'm actually 34 weeks pregnant, so it's very concerning for me that my child will be growing up beside this gas station. Not only for the pollution, but for crime. I'm nervous that it's 24 hours. I feel like it's already quiet where I am. I don't have any neighbors right now at the side of me, so I can't imagine when people pulling in with the gas station and in that area, just that there's just going to be a lot more people. But I do want to point out, because I do pull out onto that road where I do take the left to go onto the bridge because I work in Middletown. And it is, since COVID restrictions, when we bought our house 2 years ago, it was quieter back then, but the traffic is definitely a lot more right now, and sometimes I will take a right to go to take a turn on another street to come back down that road, because traffic sometimes doesn't let me out of my house when I want to take that left out onto to get to Middletown. So I just wanted to point that out, and I thank you for your consideration. And like I said, I know everyone mentioned about concerns about pollution and things like that. So yeah, and crime, and so. Thank you again, guys.
Thank you very much. And I see a gentleman standing in the aisle. Did you want to come forward?
I think she's waiting.
Yes, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Jamie French, and I live on Hobson Avenue.
And how do you spell the last name, Jamie?
French, like the language.
Oh, French, right.
And my first name is spelled Jamie. I did send an email in yesterday.
Yes, I do have that.
Okay, it wasn't on the list. And so I grew up here. My parents were the first house on Brackett Avenue, which is in the Robert Gray neighborhood, when it was a dirt road. I grew up between the Ford Farm and Hicks Farm. Tiverton was quite a different place. It was rural. It was no different than the south end and the north end looked the same. There was no difference. Back in the 60s, the north end wanted to get the same zoning as the south end, but it wasn't allowed. And eventually we figured out why. You know, when you look at the 10 things that make your house less valuable that you can live near, we've got a lot of them here in the north end. We have the funeral parlor, we've got the crematorium, we have the cemetery, we have, not the power plant, but it's very close, we've got the shooting range. These are all things that they list nationally, people don't want to live next to, but they've all been put in the north end where there were farms. We also have now the convenience store with the gas station, which is the number 2 thing that you do not want to have in your neighborhood because of all the reasons people list. But for some reason, everything keeps going in on Main Road between State Line and Route 24. We have been shown absolutely no respect. In my lifetime, we've gone from farmland to kind of a semi-slum. And I haven't even included, my addition to that list would be these little big box, nothing businesses that don't even have any landscape, and they're ugly. And they're even allowed.
Jamie, could I remind you to speak specifically to the applicant's proposal and not what is happening in North Tiverton in general?
Well, the applicant's proposal is number 2 on the list of things that you don't want in your neighborhood.
Why?
Because it reduces property values. It's toxic. People don't want to live near a gas station convenience store. It's 24 hours a day. And I lived in Tucson, Arizona, and they put in a 9-pump quick trip, a half a mile from my house. Now, I lived in a city of 500,000 people, and we noticed it. It drove out the business, the other gas stations in the area. I lived a half a mile away, and I could still, there was more illumination in the sky. There was more noise. And that's in a big city with major roadways. Now, this is quite different, you know? So it seems to me that I also looked at the community, the comprehensive community plan, and it says in 4.4 policies that we are to protect the rural character of this community. This project does not do that. It says that we have to protect the natural features that sustain the basic functions of this town. This does not add to that. It says to protect the environment from potential sources of contamination. Well, that's a question, isn't it? Preserve and enhance the visual quality of the community and its natural beauty. That's not happening with this project. It says to preserve the historic and architectural features and the special areas of the community that contribute to the unique character. Again, that is not happening. None of these things, all of these things are of our policies that says that we are to follow. We don't hit a single one of them with this project. And it says that, you know, it is our duty to protect and preserve our town. And that is your function as the planning board. You are to protect us and to preserve the quality of our town. And I think that now is the time for a renewed respect of the North End. And we can't fix the damage that has been created already, but we can not make the situation worse. So I say no to Seasons and to any other development that doesn't fit within our comprehensive community plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Timothy Connick, C-O-N-N-I-C-K. I live at 15 Salisbury Street in Tiverton. I've just been sitting here listening to everyone else and taking a few notes and thinking to myself, well, you were talking about the fuel delivery trucks, and that would be somewhere around 12 per month. Well, what about the food delivery trucks, the water delivery trucks, the milk delivery trucks, the bread delivery trucks, the Coke or Pepsi delivery trucks, maintenance and repair trucks, garbage trucks? There's going to be a lot more trucks here than just the fuel truck that comes rolling in, so please take that into account. That's a lot of trucks. Also thinking to myself, why aren't there any gas stations open in Tiverton overnight? Probably because we don't need one. Who the heck is up driving around looking for a gas station at 2 a.m.? And if you do feel the need to get gas at 2 a.m., I suggest you get on Fish Road, follow it all the way down into Fall River, keep right on going down Mariano Bishop Boulevard. You don't have to take any turns or anything. And right in front of you will be a Seasons. Now be careful when you get out of the car at Seasons, because I have personally found hypodermic needles on the ground at Seasons, because I used to get gas there. I don't anymore, but I used to. So something to think about. It's a nice neighborhood down there in the middle of the night. You ought to go by and check it out sometime. Thank you.
Hello, Sarah Trollbaugh.
If you could please take the mask off, we can hear you a little better.
Makes sense. Sarah Trollbaugh, T-R-O-B-A-U-G-H, at 8 Bridgeport Road.
I just wanted to piggyback on a couple of the points that were made because I have some numbers that might help fill in some of the comments that people have made. Regarding safety and traffic flow, and this is from the Comprehensive Community Plan. So that was in 2018, and they took the police department statistics from 2014, and out of 110 traffic accidents on that 10-mile stretch of Main Road from Fall River to Little Compton, 32, or almost a third, were in that 1 1/3 mile stretch between Dollar General and Route 24, and was attributed to, they quote, the number of intersections, driveways, and other obstacles, which would certainly be present at seasons. Now, in the section 811 of the comprehensive plan traffic data, the annual average daily traffic counts for the main road north of Route 24 as of 2014 were 9,500. It's estimated that the daily trips as a result of this proposed gas mart will be at least 2,000, which is more than a 20% increase. That sounds crazy. And since it's only about 1/3 of a mile south to Route 24, and we're thinking of outside people, travelers, coming in to get gas, and the backup that will be created potentially at that Route 24 southbound exit ramp, can we not see that potentially backing up into the travel lanes of Route 24 and presenting that kind of hazard, especially if with all this more congestion, would there not be a need for a traffic light at that area? Already, it seems like the Souza Main Road intersection pretty much needs a traffic light with all the problems that people have been bringing up. With this seasons going in, that's going to be a given. And a traffic light is not a good solution. You have backups, interruption of the traffic flow, pissing people off, annoying people, I guess, for the record. And that is more and more of a reality. And I've seen crazy, dangerous things just on Bulger Road and Fish Lane. This guy zoomed out ahead of seven cars to get past the traffic sweeper. It was crazy. That happened yesterday. There's all kinds of risky driving behavior that you don't see, you didn't used to see, and you do see. And I think we are looking at all the things that we can anticipate, but there are undoubtedly going to be many regrettable, unforeseen, and unintended consequences in the future related to this. It's kind of like Murphy's Law, it's going to happen. Another, let's see, statistics. As far as the community supporting the gas station and the need, there's one guideline that says it takes 3,000 to 6,000 people living within 1/2 mile to 1.5 miles to support a single gas station. So that seems like it's kind of a given that the existing gas stations are going to be driven out of business, especially with the reality of larger chains can engage in predatory pricing. They suck in the customers with lower gas prices because of the volume that they can present. And that draws customers away from the existing stores, and they're very often put out of business. Abandoned gas stations are difficult to convert. They become dilapidated, and where there was once activity and active business, a thriving community business, you now have blight. What do those old gas stations get turned into?
So you've mentioned a number of statistics. It would be, I think, very helpful to the planning board if you could put that in writing.
I'm just giving you a report of this.
Oh, okay.
And I would be glad to send you the link of where I got so much of this information, and it came from Preserve Tiverton. It's an excellent resource. It's called CEDS, and it's a community it's a resource to help communities fight this kind of thing.
So if you could just summarize what you've got in your hand and then make sure that we have a copy of
Yeah,
it.
I was basically kind of filling in with some of the numbers to help
you.
get a bigger, a better view. And the last one is that local economies are better off with the local-owned businesses in terms of the money that stays in the community. It's about 48% with a local business. Those funds stay in the community, as opposed to about 14% with a larger national chain. And I will close with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Hathaway.
Hold on, sir, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's ask how many more people there are, then we'll determine if she gets a break now.
Do we have a number of other people, or are we pretty close to the? Well, I see one hand up, so I think we only have the present speaker who is at the podium now, and the person who raised her hand. And if that's it, then we can continue now without giving a break to the stenographer. Thank you.
Okay. Great.
Again, your name and address.
My name is Bruce Hathaway. I live at 43 Lewis Avenue in Tiverton. Hathaway, Hathaway. There's been a lot spoken about traffic, and so I'm going to cut down really what I was going to speak to, and that is specifically Figure 6 from their traffic study, which I've made copies here. Specifically, they did their traffic study during COVID, so let's just assume it's regular traffic. Their own traffic study shows that roughly during rush hour, going by that area, there's roughly 1,000 cars per hour. It's about little less than 1,000 during morning rush hour in 1 hour, and about 1,100 in the afternoon rush hour. Again, this is their own study. This is a normal commuting day they themselves measured, not a hypothetical situation. This is every rush hour, every weekday, about 1,000 cars going by that one area. They also state that and there's their own study right here, they also state that over 50 cars traveling southbound coming down Gas House Hill going towards Route 24, during rush hour, 50 cars in 1 hour, 53 actually, will try to take a left into the gas station. Okay? The cars that stopping to the 53 cars to take this left during heavy rush hours will have to wait quite a long time to take the left due to all the rush hour traffic driving north at the same time. Since the road lanes are not wide enough to drive around a car that's trying to take this left, that means all the southbound traffic will back up dramatically up Gas House Hill, probably up to Rite Aid and Humphreys. And they project this will happen over 50 times per hour during rush hour. If you know what it's like when a school bus stops on Main Road in Tiverton, right? One school bus. Imagine during rush hour, that times 53, driving down Gas House Hill, going towards 24, how far will that back up Gas House Hill? 53 times in 1 hour. This gentleman talks about takes 5 minutes, where you live right there? Right across the street. 5 minutes, I don't doubt it, but let's say okay, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 3. That's for one person to pull out. What happens if 53 cars are trying to take that left? They'll never be able to. And all the other people driving north? What about, that's just for normal commuters. If there's roughly 478 cars driving south during that hour, and 53 are trying to take that left, that means 420-something drivers are going to be backed up the hill, and then the next ones and the next ones, and add bus traffic. What happens if an ambulance is coming from North Tiverton and wants to get to the old folks' home? That's pretty much all I had to say. I think it's a really, really big deal. Those cars taking a left into that development, I think somebody needs to take a really good, close look at that. Another thing, too, is that when Carpianato proposed their development, a big issue back then was line of sight. back by Souza Road. One of the reasons that I believe the Carpionado entrance was rejected because the road goes like this. Comes down Gas House Hill and it curves around where Souza Road is and it curves around again. So I think you should take a really close look at line of sight and really should get an independent traffic study to take a look at that. That's it, thank you.
Do you have any prepared remarks that you can? Excellent, thank you, Mr. Hathaway.
This is just figure 5 from their own traffic study. That all the numbers that I just mentioned, 1,000 cars per hour, et cetera, this is from their traffic study. I printed out a copy, I printed out 10.
Okay, I'll make a note of that.
The 53 cars taking the left, it's right here during 1 hour. So I'm going to put this up. Thank you.
Your name and address, please.
Susan Anderson, O.N., 1137 Main, and I live in the National Register Historic District. That is just south of this portion. It's actually it's 3 houses south of where this wants to go. But I'm not talking about the residences there, because everybody knows where this is. There's residences all around it. The new residences are going in around it that aren't there yet. What I am going to talk about is this is a corner where you have it's the intersection of 2 roads. You have Schooner, which is a 2-lane road. You have Souza across from it, which is a 2-lane road. You have Main, which is a 2-lane road. None of them can be widened. I am going to be reading from Yelp reviews for seasons that I found today. Chris from North Kingstown, apparently this is a Seasons in North Kingstown, he says, "Super dangerous parking lot. It's obvious they never should have built this location on such a small piece of land. The drive-through lanes for the car wash and coffee shop have cars randomly parked in them, and people come flying through the lot in every direction. The negativity continues inside, where surly employees act inconvenienced by having to interrupt their conversations with each other in order to cash you out. There are lots of gas stations in town, and they're all cheaper and less treacherous to patronize. Do yourself and your car a favor by skipping this one." Another one wrote of this same location. Jerry wrote, "This place is a logistical nightmare. The parking lot is like a demolition derby track. Gas pumps are way too close to the parking at the front door, and I always have trouble dodging cars in and around the gas pumps. You take your life in your hands walking from the gas pumps to the front door. Tell everyone you care about to avoid this accident waiting to happen." Now, these are already established seasons, and I want to point out that the seasons that we do know in our area are all within commercial districts. And I mean commercial. I mean, you don't see any houses. Medicom Avenue in Bristol. You have a multi-lane highway. Medicom is multi-lanes in front of the Seasons. You also have 3 lanes, a turning lane on the other road. I forget what road that is. That's going. That's on the other corner of Seasons. That's Medicom. You have Route 81 in Fall River. That's a definite multi-lane highway where that Seasons is. You have, and that's all commercial. There's no houses there. The Newport, the one they have in Newport already, that used to be a gas station, so that was kind of grandfathered in. That's farther down in 5th Ward, but that's become a commercial area. And the one in Middletown that exists on East Main and Valley Road, that was also a gas station that they've taken over at that corner. But again, you have multi-lane highways. East Main Road is multi-lanes. It's got 4 lanes each side, 2 lanes and 2 lanes. That's a 4 lanes across. It's all commercial. There's no houses there. And the one that they want to put in Newport, the other one they want to put in Newport, is at the Rotary. And again, that's all commercial. There's no houses there. They want to kick out the diner that's been in there for decades. But that's all commercial. So again, why, what they have done is they put their seasons in these multi-lane areas that are strictly commercial. You have commercial all around you. You don't see any residences from all these seasons. So I just want to give your attention to that they are used to that. They have these in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. They have like 100 stores all over the area. And if they have a small lot, apparently you have these Yelp reviews that say, go someplace else, use the small ones that are in town already. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a little bit of planning board business to deal with before we can end this discussion. I'd like to raise the issue which is on the agenda of a possible discussion and vote on peer review. You've heard several people tonight mention a possible peer review of traffic. Does anybody on the board feel that that would be useful, keeping in mind that a peer review is not a brand new comprehensive study, but simply checking on the data and the sources of the official traffic study submitted by the applicant, and that was done by PAR Engineering. So what you get in a peer review may not even address some of the traffic safety issues that have come up tonight. But how do people feel about that? Does anybody think we need a peer review of traffic or a peer review of any of the other documents that have been submitted to us by the applicant? Peter?
In regards to traffic, while a peer review of the existing data would be useful, I don't think it's as effective as what's really needed here, which is an independent third-party review and study. And I would say that if we're going to expend any resources, it should be put toward that end.
I'm inclined to agree with you that the peer reviews, the traffic peer reviews that we have gotten and that I've seen in my last 12 years on the planning board have really not gotten into some of the issues that have been raised tonight. And so I think we do need something very independent and something that will start from scratch and look at all of the various aspects, because it is a very dangerous intersection. The intersection is actually rated F by the Association of American Highway Traffic Officials in their level of service manual. That's the worst it can be. An F rating means that particularly the east and west entrances into the intersection coming off Schooner and Souza are virtually dysfunctional. I'm almost inclined to say we know so much about that corner now because we've got other traffic studies on that corner coming from other applicants that, but I would go along with a really independent, start from scratch study, and because we need to look at not only the AASHTO level of service information, we also need to look at what the state highway department has said. I have an article quoting a spokesman from RIDOT 2 years ago saying that Souza is one of the worst 3 state roads in the town of Tiverton. We also need to look at the Institute of Traffic Engineers. That hasn't been brought up tonight, and I didn't see anything in the PAR report referencing the Institute of Traffic Engineers, but they have something called a trip generation manual, and if you take a look at the proposed gas station and convenience store, it falls into a category that the Institute of Traffic Engineers says will be drawing a fairly substantial amount of traffic from the local highway, from Route 24. Those people at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're not coming from my neighborhood, they're coming from Route 24. So I think that, you know, and then of course, whether people get off Route 24 onto Fish or onto Main, in either case, a lot more traffic is generated. So there are a lot of issues that need to be looked at that are not addressed in the PAR report. I would also point out that in terms of the traffic counts, the traffic in the town of Tiverton goes way up in the summer. Notice how none of the traffic studies that are ever presented to us are ever done in the summer. Those of us who pay attention to these things know that because of a large number of summer homes in the region, not just in Tiverton, but in Little Compton and Westport, there are thousands more people in our little area in the summer than in the winter, but all of these traffic counts seem to be getting done in months like March and December. So there's a lot to look at. Peter, what do the rest of you think? Sorry for my dialogue going on there for too long.
I think it's extremely important that we do have this information so that we can make very good findings of fact. I've been disappointed on some of, not just this one, the technical review committees that I've sat on, but so many times our department heads are not there to help us. So I think all the help we can get is very important.
Thank you, Rosemary. Would it be, Chris, did you have?
And I too would agree with that.
Okay.
And a traffic study as well.
So we need to look into the possibility of getting an independent, truly independent traffic study done, not by any of the local firms who deal with seasons in other respects, but something that will be objective and comprehensive. And so do we need, I suppose that can't be just a general agreement. I think we probably need a motion.
Of course you need a motion, but I think you need to take a short break for the stenographer.
Oh, for the stenographer. Okay, I'm happy to
She
take
asked
us.
for it.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. Not for the planning board.
Let's take a break.
No, whose idea was it to take a break? Your idea or his? We don't have any more. Oh, okay. No, that's fine. Let's take a break right now.
Yeah,
5 minutes?
We all need to take a break.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to call this back into order so we're not here until 1 o'clock in the morning. So we're having a discussion right now among the board, and I believe that we have pretty much come to the point where we need to vote on a study from scratch of traffic conditions at the corner of Souza and Main and at the intersection of Souza, Main, and Schooner. Peter has recommended not a peer review, which only looks at certain things. only looks at issues basically raised by the study done for the applicant. But some of the other issues that were raised tonight that are pertinent and very important if you're interested in human health and safety, which is the number one purpose of zoning. So Peter has made that recommendation. I would agree with it. A fallback might be to say, no, let's not do that. Let's just have a peer review. But you all know what you're going to get with peer reviews. So is there any discussion, or should I just go ahead and make a motion based on what Peter has recommended? Okay, so we have a motion from Amanda for a brand new study. And I'll second that. So we have a motion and a second.
Who's paying for that, Mr. Hardy?
The town of Tiverton will pay out of the fee it received from the applicant. Now, a fee is not an escrow account. A fee is a flat-out fee given to the town of Tiverton to pay for what needs to be studied and reviewed in order for the planning board to make accurate findings of fact. So, that's who would pay for this, and I don't know that the cost would be that excessive. I think that these studies tend to be more in the area of 10 to 15,000, but did I answer your question, Todd?
As to payment, and I was just asking for further clarification as to what you want the study to actually identify. I think you mentioned before the AASHTO, the ITE.
What I would do, and I'm not prepared to do it right now, but I think we should ask a traffic engineer to look at when the traffic counts were taken in the study done by PAR, and if they feel that a more recent traffic count that would take into account, for example, the increased traffic in the summertime, if that is something that needs to be done, and then those traffic count numbers, everything else depends on those traffic count numbers. Everything falls into place when you get an accurate traffic count. We also need somebody to take a look at the AASHTO level of service manual to make sure that that what I just said about level of service F is correct, and also taking a look at level of service assigned to some of the other streets that abut the property. Thirdly, we need an expert to take a look at the Institute of Traffic Engineers trip generation manual to get a much better understanding of just how much more traffic will be generated by an 8-pump gas station, a convenience store, which I believe is 3,600 square feet, and 24-hour drive-through. And where that additional traffic comes from. Does it come from Route 24? Does it come from Little Compton? So those are the three things that I think were brought up tonight by members of the audience that are well worth looking at. Also, I think that Mr. Hathaway took a look at a chart in the applicant's traffic study, and we need to have our expert take a second look at that to see if he agrees with Mr. Hathaway that those are very dangerous conditions, that those turnings would cause a traffic problem. So those are just some of the ones I can think of now. I would volunteer and maybe Peter would help me on this, to put something together on paper that would serve as sort of a request for proposals that we could send out and send out to people who do not necessarily do business in the state of Rhode Island.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to add, I think, in terms of developing an RFP or a request for proposal, the word comprehensive was used, and I want to just be clear about what that means. That should include the intersection of Fish and Souza and the interchanges off 24 north and south.
Right.
And I also think that the daily trip generation calculation is generally based on the users of said facility, but what we heard compelling testimony tonight was also all the vendors servicing that facility as it's proposed in terms of additional deliveries beyond fuel. So I would want to make sure that in that RFP, all of those matters are really clearly called out for, and that this is commissioning of a new study and not relying on old data. I think we also heard compelling testimony about the times of year. And so I think this has to be done over a period of time to collect the most useful and accurate data points, which would include during the school season as well as summer, to really get what we need, because it's a critically important component of this project.
So we have a motion, we have a second, and we're having discussion. Now, Chris?
If I may, just for some clarification, so if Tiverton's going to conduct a traffic study, is it specific to the Seasons project? Or
Yes.
is it a tool that'll be used for Tiverton as a whole as it moves forward into the future?
Specific to the Seasons project.
Okay, understood.
And just looking at that area and what impact a Seasons development would have on traffic patterns in the town of Tiverton. That's all it would do. That's all we can do.
Conversation about how the future was going to, that's why I was
Well,
asking that question of what some folks were saying.
Right,
that's all.
right.
Very good,
So
thank you.
any other questions?
Can you just read the motion one more time?
Okay, well, did you want to do that, Todd? You've been making notes.
I can try. I believe the motion is for a comprehensive study of traffic conditions at the intersections of Main, Schooner, and Souza. This comprehensive study is to be paid for by or from the application fee of Seasons Gas Station. The study will include, in part, when traffic counts are done, whether the traffic counts included by PAR Engineering, PAR
Corporation.
PAR Corporation were at the appropriate time, and to also, however, include new counts that take into consideration summer traffic, school year. We are also looking for an analysis regarding the AASHTO, is that how you say it? Level of service, and whether the intersection of Main and Souza is in fact rated F, but also the ratings of other nearby intersections. Also to include an analysis of the ITE manual for an 8-pump gas station with an approximate 3,600 square foot.
Trip generation manual.
With an approximate 3,600 square foot convenience store with drive-through, to analyze where the traffic is coming from, to review the applicants, we believe it's figure 6 as discussed by Mr. Hathaway and the left turn analysis that he presented. The impact on Fish and Souza Road, as well as the interchanges of off of Route 24. And to include in the study not only the customer trip generation, but include vendor trip generation.
Yes, right, all of the trucks. Yeah, that's my understanding. Very good list. So, Ed, did you get that? Okay. So, any other questions about this?
Can I just make a comment, though?
Yep.
My concern for the board is the time it would take to complete this study and whether Seasons will agree to that extension. And
Right.
I can try to find somebody to do a peer review as soon as possible and tell them that they're under a deadline. I don't know if it's possible.
Right.
Just as part of your consideration. Although Seasons has been very accommodating to this point.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to call the question. All of those in favor of this motion?
I'm sorry, did you get a second?
Yes.
Who was the second?
I was.
Amanda made the motion, Stu made the second.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it's unanimous. Everybody agreed. Well, we will not be able to deal with Seasons in August because that meeting has been taken up by another huge application, largely. So that puts us in the month of September. That gives us a little bit more time. I'm not sure that this will take all that much time. Anybody who knows how to get this data can probably put something together. So anyhow, but we'll see. We'll just cross that bridge when we come to it. Are there any other peer reviews that anybody can think of? I can't think of anything. It would, going back to the concept of a peer review, it would be a review of a document, a study document, an analysis document that the applicant has actually given us about the project. And I don't, I think that we've all seen Seasons, and so it's a lot easier for us to envision what they're proposing than a project that is unique. So I'm not sure that there's that much to study. So does anybody have any other thoughts for peer review or comprehensive study? No, I'm not seeing that. Then I would like to go on briefly and just ask everybody about this last item on the agenda, item number 1, which is possible conditional approval for master plan with recommendation to ZBR for special use permit for a gas station and drive-through. What do you all think about conditional approval and giving our input into the zoning board of review with respect to 2 and possibly 3 special use permits, or 2 special use permits and a dimensional variance permit? I haven't seen anything.
Okay, so I think maybe the agenda wasn't clear then. What that means is taking the vote on the master plan application. The planning board, the procedure is, because Seasons requires a special use permit, zoning board relief, the planning board will grant or deny master plan approval conditionally. Then they go to the zoning board. If the zoning board grants their relief that they request there, then your master plan approval vests, is how I'll say it.
Yes.
And then then they come back before you for preliminary approval.
Okay, I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
I apologize.
I misunderstood this.
We'll make the agenda clearer.
So I don't think we're anywhere close to making decisions. And I think we need more information, and we need to digest the information that we received tonight, and we need to digest the information that we'll receive during our September meeting, and especially the comments that the applicant makes in response. I think that we also need to take a good hard look at all of the information that came out of that technical review committee meeting, and instruct staff to please follow up with the applicant on items that were requested that the applicant might not even be aware of. So that generally that happens right after a technical review committee is held, but there was a change of staff or staff issues that prevented that from happening, but I think that needs to be followed up on. I completely agree. Otherwise, the technical review committee is a waste of time. So that's all I have to say. So now I think we can move on to agenda item number 2, which is the same issue, but this time it's the application not as a master land development, but as a development plan review under Article 20 of zoning. And here, all I think we need to do, Todd, and tell me if I'm wrong, is we do need to do a motion that would continue the public hearing for both master land development and development plan review to the September 13 meeting. So I would like to make that motion to continue the public hearing to September 13, 2022, regular monthly meeting for September. I believe it's the 13th, yes, September 13. And that would be a continuation of the public hearing both under major land development and under development plan review. Do I hear a second? And then we can have a discussion.
Second.
Rosemary seconds. And so the discussion, is there any discussion on that? We're just basically, okay. All those in favor, raise their hand. And I think I've got a unanimous. Thank you. So does that pretty much deal with it? I think it does. Yes. Well, thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you in September, if not before. And we'll be in contact with you too. Thank you for that comment. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Sally. I hope your fingers aren't too tired.
Just hold on 1 second, so she can clear out.
Yep. Well, while she's clearing out, I'll just read the next one. So that brings us to agenda item number 3, and this is an application by Mr. James Towers of Warren, Rhode Island. He would like us to do a concept plan review of a major land development in North Tiverton on Main Road at Hicks Farm. It's the old Hicks farmhouse at 439 Main Road, just south of Famous Pizza, if you can imagine that. And this is for a mixed-use project that would conform to the, I believe it's a pedestrian-friendly destination zone. District, rather. So I would like to introduce the attorney who represents Mr. Towers, and that is Michael. Michael, what is your last name?
Michael Monty on behalf of James
Michael
Towers,
Monty.
the applicant.
Sorry.
It's a pleasure to meet you all this
Sorry.
evening.
I forgot.
That's not a problem.
So can you do this briefly?
I can do it briefly.
Excellent.
So As you mentioned, this is concept plan review for a mixed-use development on 439 Main Road. Really just looking to get comments from the planning board in terms of how they view the project. We have, I believe you have in front of you the elevations and the site plan that was done.
Yes, we do.
The agenda stated that 5 apartments would be proposed. Our most recent plan had 3 apartments all on the second level. So the concept behind this project would be for the first floor to be office space and the second floor would be residences. A significant amount of engineering work has already been done. As you can see on the site plan, I do have the engineer here this evening if there are any questions for him. It is our understanding that this project would not require any zoning relief. We're happy to work with the town in terms of meeting design standards. We've been advised that the form-based code applies and that this project is in the neighborhood business district and is an allowable use. So happy to field any questions you may have about the project.
So does any member of the planning board have questions that they would like to ask Mr. Monti?
At this point, what are the proposed commercial uses in the retail level?
So it's not retail, but office use. So right now, Mr. Towers runs an accounting firm, and he'd like his accounting firm to move into the space on the first floor. But I do believe that there would be additional office space that he might rent out as well, because again, initially he was thinking about 5 apartments, which would have seen 2 apartments on the first floor, but with all 3 apartments and only 3 apartments on the second floor, that would create some more open office space. So accounting is the short answer.
Do we have anything, Mr. Monti? Who advised you in the beginning stages? Do you have anything in writing? We're kind of at loss here. We were handed a large stack of plans, and
yes,
and we don't have any professional planner or on staff. Did you talk to our former planner? Or?
I did, yes. And the process that was outlined to me is that this evening, this project required concept plan review, which is what this hearing is tonight, before we can make an application for development plan review for master plan approval. The regulations, to my knowledge, state that all commercial projects require what's called a pre-application application or a concept plan review. So we, happy to, it's been difficult on our side as well to figure out what information the board would like to see from us, and we're happy to work with. Ed's been very helpful, and happy to work with the planning board, but guidance has been unclear.
Let me just mention that that the building, that the project would require the demolition of an historic house. It's actually the oldest house north of Route 24 in the town of Tiverton. It's that old white farmhouse that is just south of the strip mall that includes Famous Pizza on that side of the road. It sits behind a stone fence, a stone wall, and it was the farmhouse for the 100-acre Hick farm. Some people in the community are concerned that the applicant should consider not demolishing that property, but restoring the property and using restored property, as so many of the old buildings at Tiverton Four Corners have been repurposed to include both space for the accounting firm and maybe some other small businesses that would fit in there appropriately. The house lot was separated out from the 100-acre farm a few years back, but it's large enough to accommodate parking, et cetera. So perhaps, Mr. Monty, you could kind of take that back to Mr. Towers to see would he consider doing that, because there will be some pushback in the community about tearing down yet another colonial era house in the town of Tiverton. We just received a letter from Valerie Talmadge. She is the executive director of an organization in the state called Preserve Rhode Island. It's a statewide historic preservation organization to which I belong, along with Grow Smart Rhode Island. And she's making that point that, the owner should really consider options before tearing down an historic structure. Having said that, I have taken a close look at the plans that have been presented, and it's a rather attractive, in fact, it's exactly the kind of thing that we had in mind when we approved the pedestrian-friendly destination zoning district. Something that would be both residential and commercial, and that would be attractive, and that would be pedestrian-friendly. And this project is a great project, but the negative part of it is it might require the demolition of yet another historic structure. So, does anybody else have anything to say, or would they like to?
I was just going to add that I couldn't agree more that, you've heard, I think, just being in the audience tonight, a lot of testimony about trying to maintain the historic nature, maintain the fabric of our streetscapes, and whenever possible to not only preserve but to improve them. I thought I saw some correspondence that made your applicant aware, and if not, you should know that there are also historic tax credits available to developers who preserve and reuse historic structures. So there's actually an economic incentive to not only preserve the building but integrate it into what we have envisioned in our comprehensive plan, and it can really be a vital and lucrative, quite honestly, aspect of what you're trying to do there. The other thing I would just suggest, and I agree with Stu, that the plan for the newer structures, although we hope that the historic structure will be saved and reused, are more in compliance with what we envision. And I would just say that it would help your proposal if you further share plans of how you link other modes of transportation. How does it really meet the pedestrian needs? What other site improvements might you consider to accommodate pedestrians, bicycles, so on and so forth, and just to help really bring that vision to life. That's really the kind of thing we're looking for.
Just if I may ask a question to clarify, just so we're all working off the same, is it the planning board's understanding that this is in the neighborhood business district or the pedestrian friendly district? I was advised that it's in the neighborhood business district.
Yeah, I think it's.
I mean, we're happy to make it.
I think
friendly.
our agenda made a slight error there, because there are 3 of these different form-based code zones, and but I think you're right about that, Michael, because it's way up in the north end where. So you're right about that. So. And do you have the document from the planning office that provides design standards for the form-based code zones?
I do.
Okay,
Mr.
that's
Chairman.
good. That's good, and that would help you respond to Peter Bramante's suggestion that you take a good hard look at the design to make sure it fits in with what we're looking for, but what I've seen, I've been impressed with so far. So,
Mr. Bramante, did you, we just got this handed to us tonight. This apparently was an email from Ed from the
it just came in
Preserve
from Valerie
Rhode
College.
Island. If you'd like my copy, you're welcome to it if you didn't get it.
I haven't seen it. I'm happy to take a look at it.
Okay.
You
And
mind
I'll
if
get another
I'll
copy.
approach?
I've got two copies too. Michael, I've got 2 copies, so you can have mine.
Look at it.
Yeah, so give that to Amanda.
Okay.
So I'd like to state a few other points just in response to what I've heard that I think might be helpful.
Sure.
First, Mr. Towers isn't able to be here tonight because he's in Chicago. He would have loved to have been here, but we didn't want to ask for a continuance because it is such a crowded schedule on the planning board docket. And for tonight, hearing your feedback, understanding that this property, is very old and historic, I will speak with my client concerning the feasibility of making a design work within the existing structure. However, my strong assumption is that it won't be financially feasible to build sort of a modern mixed-use building with the current floor plan of the building in a way that would be compatible with modern standards. But it is something I'll encourage him to look into.
Thank you.
Do you have any time that you're looking at
In terms of
completion?
that's going to be highly dependent upon this process. As soon as possible, if we are given approval.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Monti on this particular project? Because he's also the lawyer for the next agenda item.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, the one thing I'm really looking for this evening is the authority to submit the application for the development plan review, because my reading of the regulations was that this meeting needed to take place first. We could have another concept plan meeting, but I think it would make the most sense to submit the formal larger application, and then we can discuss further issues at that time. So my request of the planning board is permission to move from concept plan review to development plan review.
Yes, I've asked my colleagues to give you feedback, and that's the whole purpose of concept review. So I don't see any reason why you shouldn't make an application now for Article 20 Development and Plan Review, and this would be still a major development, but it would be site and design review. But keep in mind that we have a very, very, very busy schedule for the next couple of months, and we might, if the time clock is such that we need to call you in for one of these meetings, we may have to call you in August or September just to get you to extend the time clock. So it would be nice if you would pass on to Mr. Towers the fact that we have big and controversial projects on our agenda right now that are taking a huge amount of time, as you saw tonight.
We understand.
Okay, good. So if you could just pass that on. We apologize for this, but you know it's been a feeding frenzy in the town of Tiverton lately. Hopefully the economy will turn down enough that some of these things will turn back. So, well, don't leave the podium, because the next agenda, and I don't think we need any kind of motion or anything for this, do we? I mean, we're simply...
You're advising the applicant of your thoughts on the project.
No one else had any advice, so... the next item on our agenda is petition to abandon roadways, and the abandonment of Patrick Avenue and a portion of Harrington Avenue. That's all of Harrington Avenue in the town of Tiverton.
Correct.
So, so what happens in Tiverton typically is that abutters to a paper road, that's a road that has been platted out by the town, but never ever built upon, and they're all over the town of Tiverton. I have one running behind my backyard, that when it becomes obvious that these roads should probably never be built, perhaps because of the terrain, that makes it impracticable, because when they were platted out, no one was looking at the terrain. They were just looking at a flat map. So the abutters normally come before town council and ask for a public hearing, notification of abutters and a public hearing, and then town council makes the decision whether to abandon. And if the road is abandoned, then the land goes to the abutters on each side of the road in 50-50 proportion. And then the lucky new owners of town land have to go down to Superior Court and actually get the deed changed and filed. So they pay, so the abutters pay all of the legal costs. There's no cost to the town of Tiverton. So that's my understanding, but I'll ask Todd if I have it right.
I don't know if all of that is right or applies here.
And I'm happy to very briefly introduce the project, state the applicable legal standard, and what we're asking of you this evening.
Please do that, Michael.
Excellent. So we're asking to abandon these paper roads, as you rightly stated. They're over by Saudi Pond. The town council, we went before the town council as the statute mandates, and they referred the matter to the planning board for its consideration as to whether this was a good idea, essentially. Does the planning board or the administrative office of the planning department approve of this plan? And we think it's a desirable plan because, quite frankly, it doesn't sound like the town is interested in more development, and I can't imagine that these roads would make a lot of sense today. There is a slight encroachment already on one of the roads, And I'd like to present to you an exhibit that demonstrates that, if I might approach.
Yes.
So what everyone is looking at here is the GIS from the town of Tiverton's GIS system, which overlays the Plat map, the town's Plat map, over the terrain, essentially a Google Earth type shot. Patrick Street and Harrington Avenue are the paper roads. My client owns lot 180, which are the yellow highlighted areas. And as you can see at the end of Harrington Avenue in Tiverton, you'll see that there's an existing encroachment over the paper road. And it's our position, and we're happy, my client is happy to do this in whatever way the planning board recommends. It's desirable for my client to have Patrick Street fully abandoned and Harrington Avenue abandoned up until lot 180 ends, but we thought it made more sense for the town to take care of this issue all at once, and that's why we've proposed a full abandonment. And so looking for your approval of that. Obviously, we would go back to the town council, abutters would be notified, and the town council would make the final decision. But my understanding of this evening is that the planning board would issue a thumbs up or thumbs down recommendation to the town council, passing on whether the planning board is or is not in favor of the plan for abandonment.
But could you also address the issue of who pays the costs? As I understand it, abutters have to be notified. Secondly, a public hearing has to be advertised, and that's a cost. And then thirdly, if town council agrees to the abandonment, the new owner of the paper road, or a portion of the paper road, has to then get the deed issues sorted out in Superior Court.
My understanding is that is largely correct, with the exception of the Superior Court action, but we certainly will follow the appropriate process. Our understanding is that the town council makes the decision. I need to confirm whether we would typically, we would certainly need to record something in the land evidence records, and the fee for that recording would be something my client would pay for. And we will follow whatever the appropriate town process is in terms of paying for advertisement fees. To my knowledge right now, those fees are paid by my client, but it's something I would follow up with the town and, just follow the town process. We have no objection to whatever the town's typical process is.
So, Mr. Hardy, I think to answer your question, the statute, Rhode Island General Laws 24-6-1, order of abandonment, reversion of title, states in part, the title of the land upon which the highway or driftway or part thereof existed shall revert to its owner. In this case, Mr. Monte's going to have to do some title research to find out how this was subdivided. I did a little bit of that this morning, and it was a subdivision before subdivision regulations in 1950. And before that, it was actually 1938 that was the original subdivision. And I don't know how all of that is going to shake down, but I think what you're considering, Mr. Hardy, is an eventual partition action in the Superior Court to identify title to the parts or entirety of Harrington and Patrick Avenue.
And we're happy to work with the solicitor in terms of whatever is required.
Mr. Monte, if I may interject, what is the intent? This is all one lot, even though it shows as 4.
So my client, Vincent Vivona, is planning to build his home on this lot, and it is problematic
One
for his
home?
Yes, one home, one single family home.
Okay, I was down there yesterday, and there's clear cutting has been done. There was heavy equipment in there. And then I also researched, apparently there's been a temporary electrical permit's been issued. But I have concern about the possibility of landlocking a couple of these lots that go in through there. I'm not doing well with these lights tonight, so bear with me. Lot 234 and 237 are questionable, and that looks, if we abandon it, even though that's an encroachment, which I did see that yesterday too, of 235, I guess, on that. So that's one of my questions. You've answered the one about the intent.
And could I just briefly respond to your
Sure.
question? So we would also be very pleased if the planning board made a recommendation to simply abandon that portion ending at lot 180, which the only reason we did this to include the entire road is because we thought that the town council would say, well, you're starting the process, the town's never going to build this road, why aren't you finishing this, go back and do it again. So we took the broader approach, but happy to have it whittled down.
Okay.
Okay.
And the exhibits, that I couldn't read them, that you attached, or we got in our packet with the 180. Also, one of the exhibits, there's a lot of wetland on that, but if it's going to be one lot, I mean, it is one lot, but if it's only going to be one house, there shouldn't be a problem.
And if I may address your second question, I have an enlarged version of the plan, which I can submit now as an additional exhibit, if I may approach.
Is that the one that was put together by Mount Hope Engineering?
That is correct.
Okay, that would be very helpful. It would have been when we were trying to figure out what this was. Even though it was, you submitted it apparently in April, and we just got it in July.
So I also visited the site, and you can only access it from Saudi Pond Avenue, which is a dirt road. But when I got in there, I saw the same thing that Rosemary saw yesterday. I saw a clear cutting, and it appeared to be on Patrick Street. And there was heavy construction equipment, and it's a hillside that slopes down to Saudi Pond. So I could see the area that was being cleared has a nice view of the pond. So I assumed that maybe a home was being planned. But I'm a little concerned that there was no silt fence. There was no erosion control measures, and there was quite a bit of land disturbance. Rosemary, would you agree with that? Quite a bit. I mean, it was like big trees were taken out, and there was a lot of the potential for erosion. We haven't had any rain lately, but the potential for erosion into Saudi Pond because no soil erosion sediment control measures have been installed. So I am a little concerned about that. If you could take that back to your to Mr. Vincent
Vivona. I certainly will.
I'm inclined to support what you're suggesting. So we're now talking about an abandonment of Harrington only from the southwest corner of Lot 180 and all the way down to the Fall River border, and then the abandonment of Patrick Street in its entirety. And that would allow your client to put his pieces together, which shows up in the tax assessor's office as a single lot, even though it's really in three pieces. So that makes sense to me. Also, I noticed that a lot of that, and certainly Harrington, is wet. There are a lot of wetlands. Patrick sort of goes up on a hill, so there is uplands there. But getting to Patrick would cause a road to be built over wetlands to just get to Patrick Street. So I completely agree that this is something that the town probably should never develop, and I would be inclined to support the abandonment. But I would also like to mention to town council, when we give them our decision, or a recommendation rather, that we have noticed land disturbance in the vicinity of Patrick Street, and that whether that disturbance is on private land or town land, the building official needs to go out there and eyeball it, and if he sees a problem with soil erosion sediment control, to issue a cease and desist. So that would be part of my recommendation. So I'll recommend right now that we agree to, well, let me just go through this and then I'll call on you. That we agree to the abandonment of part of Harrington, only that part of Harrington that borders on the yellow portions that are owned by Mr. Vivona already, and the abandonment of all of Patrick Street, but at the same time recommend to town council that they send out the appropriate town official, which I believe would be the building official or the zoning enforcement official, to check out what is actually going on there and to see if a cease and desist needs to be issued. Having said that, I don't need to call on you, but I think it's the chairman's prerogative to call on you. I assume you're neighbors and you have something to say about this. A lot. Okay, well, why don't you come up, and I don't think Mr. Monty minds.
I don't have any objection to that.
Bigger than what we were provided from the lawyer's office, that we were supposed to actually be able to read.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't read it
Same
either.
with us.
I was pretty disgusted by it.
Me too.
What about the stream that runs across the back of my house?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Your names and your
I'm sorry.
Your name?
My name is Kristen. This is my husband Mark. Last name Tardy, T as in Tom, A-R, D as in David, I-C, 127 Saudi Pond Avenue, Tiverton, Rhode Island, part of which is in Fall River.
What lot are you?
I honestly don't know the lot number off the top of my head. I'm so sorry to say that, but I'm sure it's on his big map that I can't read.
Okay, Mr. Monty, tell us, please.
So just also getting up to speed, we sent a letter out to all of the abutters asking them to please contact us with any questions, and I'm happy to speak with you.
I've spoke
I don't
to
have
all of our neighbors. None of them got letters.
We're the only abutter, that's why.
And so are you, I didn't catch your names. And I can
Cranston, Kristin.
Yep.
Last name Tardy, T as in Tom, A-R, D as in David, I-E. Husband here is Mark, same last name, M-A-R-K, P-A-R-D-I-E, 127.
127
Saudi Pond Avenue. So basically, your client wants to build his house against the back corner of my house, which he's got this entire piece of land.
So it's lot 177. It's the portion bordering Massachusetts. And
17, oh, yes, I see it.
and
I
it's,
see it, yes.
You have it identified as Janet C. Aveo?
That's my mother who's deceased. I am on the deed. And I believe the spelling on the deed is Kristen. The lawyer said that was okay. The letter was addressed to both of us. I have it right here from the lawyer's office.
Okay.
If you'd like to see it up close, I can. It says Janet C. Pago and Kristen Park, 127 Saudi Pond Avenue.
yes, and as I said,
That was the letter that we received with the manager now. Telling us that basically he wants to abandon these roads to be able to push that house as far back on that lot as he can. So it's going to be up against a house that's been there since 1964. My grandfather built it. And one of the reasons why I stayed is because of the privacy, which is now going to be wrong.
But he has to abide by setback restrictions, and the setback for a backyard would be at least 25 feet.
What about a backyard that has a stream going through it that actually is runoff to Saudi Pond?
Well, if it's got a stream running through it, then
encourage
wetland regulations would kick in, and he wouldn't be able to build close to the stream.
I encourage any and all of you to please come to my property tomorrow. Any day. I don't care if it's tomorrow, I don't care if it's on the weekend. You can come on Sunday when his client is actually doing all of that removal work.
There was work in there yesterday when I went by.
Yep, well, you should be there on a Sunday.
Typical in Tiverton.
But I encourage every last one of you to come and see the property. Understand what's actually going on there. And to think that it's not going to landlock anything, not if you go, I mean, I don't encourage anybody to try walking in those woods right now because that would be dangerous. But during no green on the trees, when you can see in there, you're going to understand that that's going to landlock the whole area. So basically, the only other people that would be able to build is going to be on the side of 180. They're not going to be able to sell those properties because nobody's going to be able to get in there because there's nowhere else to be able to get anybody in there. There's no other roads there. I understand these roads were on paper and the town never did anything about it. That's not our fault. That's the town's decision that they never did anything about it. And yes, Harrington Avenue, which is the one that goes down the side of my property, boulders and a stream and a swamp and frogs and every other kind of creature you can think of in there. That's where that water goes. It goes across the back of my house, hooks a hard left, no joke, and it just opens up into a swamp. And I'm not sure which direction you came in from, if you came in from the Phil's propane side or if you came in from the Wood Avenue side.
From the Phil's propane side on Crandall.
If you come in from the other side, there's a very small cement bridge that my grandfather built years ago, before my house was even built. The water goes under that bridge to get to Saudi Pond, in between two houses, literally. It's always been there. I grew up in that house. And to say that it's wetlands is not a joke.
That's why I was asking what the intent was, if it's just going to be one house in there, or you're going to subdivide it at some future time.
And please excuse me for just a moment. My intention is not to try to stop them from building. Our intention, I should say, our intention is, why do you have to build that house up against the back of mine?
For the view.
He's got a better view by being closer. He's not gonna get the pond view by being behind my house.
How wide do you think that these paper streets are?
So, I mean,
I can't read the scale.
So if you're looking at the first exhibit that shows Harrington and Patrick on the overlay of the GIS data, I'm not sure that abandoning Harrington Avenue, that portion of which abuts Lot 180, would have any impact on any ability in terms of, you could still build presumably right up, Lot 127 abuts Lot 180, so no matter what.
Right, they get half of it.
It's not gonna change. Well, actually, if you'll look at the, yes, correct, they're gaining lands.
That I have to pay taxes on that I don't want and can't use.
And I just want to emphasize to the board, a couple of things. In terms of the exhibits that you received, I'm not sure if, we submitted this quite some time ago. I believe I submitted full set plans, but I can understand how that didn't make its way to each and every one of you. And in terms of reaching out to the abutters, I think this is largely an educational process because the issues that are being spoken to are not germane to what we're asking for. So, and we certainly didn't have to send out those initial letters, and I'm happy to meet with you either at your home or in our offices and further explain the process. Mr. Bavona is trying to do this the right way, which is why we're here tonight.
Then let him pay the fees and the taxes.
I just have a quick question. So where is he clearing exactly? I know normally in this town it's easier just to do things and ask for forgiveness later on. It seems to be a trend. So where exactly has he started clearing already? Is it in the wetland area? Is that why he's clearing it already?
I do not have knowledge of the extent of any clearing that may or may not have been done, but I certainly would expect that my client is following the law.
Well, you could see how it looks, right? When you're already clearing something, it's kind of...
I know, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Well, that was one of my questions, but you answered it early on. Had the abutters been noticed?
So there is a notice requirement under the statute, which comes at the town council level, and it's prescribed by law. We sent out a notice from our office to reach out to try to connect to the abutters so that we could explain what we wanted to do, and also to ask abutters, there's only a certain amount we are interested in abandoning. Right. For example, lot 127, we don't need to abandon, we could also cut it off if you just keep running that line parallel that, if they don't want the portion that abuts them to be abandoned, that small slice there, it just doesn't make much sense from the perspective of, development planning for the town to own a tiny piece of paper road. I think by all accounts this makes sense. So, I'm requesting that the planning board make a positive recommendation to the town council that the road has ceased to be useful to the public, which is the standard by which we determine whether abandonment is or is not appropriate. And I certainly think that the road has ceased to be useful to the public. And I'm happy to do it to Either way, I would not object if it were only a portion that abuts 180, or if the town wants to take the more global, and I would argue appropriate approach from a global point of view. Somebody in the future may come back and say, 10 years ago you abandoned most of it, now we're here, you abandoned slightly more. We're happy to do whatever the town council and the planning board advises, but we do think from a legal perspective, the paper roads have ceased to be useful to the public.
So let me try to understand where the tardies are coming from. Your concern is the footprint where they plan to put a new building, a new house.
That's one of them.
Two concerns.
There's more than two. That's one of them.
Okay, that's one of them. So you want that, you want Mr. Vivona to build his new house farther away from you.
In other words, there doesn't need to be any abandonment of any roads that don't actually exist. Leave everything the way it is, stop wasting everybody's time, and build the house down a little bit further on your own property. You don't own Patrick Drive, you don't own Harrington Avenue. I don't either, and I don't want to own any part of them. I pay this town enough taxes for property
Okay, so
that I can't use.
you're opposed to the abandonment.
I am absolutely 150% opposed to the abandonment.
Okay.
And again, I'm also happy to not have, that portion most, close to Massachusetts, that I suppose is to the south of lot 177, not being abandoned.
Doesn't make sense.
But again, from a planning perspective, it's not sensible.
So, so the decision we as a board have to make, because the town council has asked us to advise them on this matter, is first of all, would we recommend the abandonment of all or part of Harrington and Patrick? And is there anything else that we need to call to the attention of town council? One thing would be Mr. and Mrs. Tardy object, do not wish to participate in this abandonment process and take on any new land, and oppose the abandonment of Patrick and Harrington. Just call that to the attention of town council. And also, I think we need to call to the attention of town council the fact that Mr. Vivona is doing some rather substantial land clearing with very heavy equipment, and whether or not that's on town land or on private land, it's probably a violation of soil erosion and sediment control ordinance in the town of Tiverton. And the building official probably needs to go out there and take a look at it. That's what I would recommend, and I think we should let town council hold a hearing, and then the Tardys can come, and maybe other neighbors can come and make their statement. But I personally feel that abandoning some of these paper roads and paper streets is a very good idea if those are in areas where development is inappropriate because of the presence of wetlands, and or because of the presence of endangered species, or because of the presence of historical and archaeological artifacts, whatever. Because as long as they are town-owned property and paper streets or paper roads, a developer has the right to go in and develop that at their own expense in order to put a subdivision in. And so, for example, if somebody wanted to put a subdivision on 8 Rhode Way, they can do it. The Supreme Court has made that ruling. They can do it, not in the town of Tiverton, but in another town, so it's case law. If they pay to bring that road up to town standards and state standards. And that's, you know, and that would be unfortunate because 8 Rhode Way involves all kinds of historical and archaeological artifacts and sites that should not be turned into a subdivision, in my opinion. So I'm just saying that whenever a homeowner comes before the planning board about abandoning, I'm usually pretty supportive of that because a lot of these streets never should have been platted out in the first place. But as long as they're there as paper streets, they can cause real mischief and do things that us planners would not like to see happen in the town of Tiverton. So I would make a motion that we support the applicant in the abandonment of Harrington Avenue and Patrick Street, but just as it abuts the borders of Mr. Vavona's land that he owns now, not going any further west on Harrington and not going any further east on Harrington to leave the portion that abuts the Tardy's property in town hands. So I would make that motion, but I would also suggest that in our communication with town council, we call their attention to the fact that the Tardys are objecting, and that we also call the attention of town council to the fact that there is probably soil erosion sediment control statute violation taking place, and they probably need to get the building official out there.
They need to cite it. I mean, I would go along with you, Stu. This is a rather large parcel. It's over 5 acres. And I wish I had this plan when I was out there, because they may be building right now in wetland.
They're not, well, what they've been clearing is upland. I can tell you that. I was looking up a hill at what is being cleared. So I don't think that there's any wetlands where they're clearing. Although there might be some.
I think it's in here.
Yeah, but here's where the clearing is going on.
There was one clearing and then there was another one. There were 2 clearings, yes.
There are 2 clearings?
Yep.
May I? I'm so sorry. I'm trying to keep this as short as possible because we sat through 3+ hours of the other situation. And this
we did too.
I know, but I would think the smaller stuff should happen so we can get out. But that's just me. But as far as the comment made about these roads no longer serve their purpose, they never had a purpose because the town never built them. That being said, up until, I'm not even sure the number of years, but it was probably 15, possibly 20. I don't know if it's that long. One person owned that entire section behind my house. All of it. So no, the roads didn't need to be built.
Well, exactly. I mean, these paper roads were crazy. It was a fad.
Serve their purpose. They didn't have a purpose to begin with.
So anyhow, I'm recommending a motion.
Can I just ask for clarification? Are you leaving the 2 ends?
Yes,
okay.
Leaving off the 2 ends. So this would only be that part of Harrington Avenue that actually borders, and Patrick Street in its entirety.
Which is the one that goes
so
behind the house.
leaving off the east end and leaving off the west end of Harrington Avenue. So just the land that abuts your client's property.
It's just that motion is conflicting because my client's property does extend all the
Right.
way to the bottom.
It doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
but we can't, but if that portion,
Yeah,
if
no,
that little eastern portion is abandoned, your client gets half of it, and the Tardys get the other half.
I understand that. I was
And they don't want the other half.
I'm just clarifying for purposes of what
Right.
you would be recommending.
Yes.
That's
So I'm clarifying that you leave that portion, that eastern end portion closest to the pond, alone.
It's poor planning.
That remains town property, even though it's tiny.
Patrick Avenue, that's the one that goes behind my house, correct?
No.
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 That's Harrington.
That's Harrington, all right, so I have them
The
backwards.
side of your house. Patrick goes north to south, and Harrington goes east to west.
Okay, I had them backwards, I'm
But
sorry.
I'm sorry. Mr. Monte, are you going to petition Massachusetts as well?
no. We don't see a need to. My client's property isn't in Massachusetts.
It says road to be abandoned, so I just by Fall River. So
Excuse
on your plan.
On the plan, so I think in the full scope of the petition, it was expressed that the area in green is the road proposed to be abandoned, and the red is the portion of that paper road that
Sure.
we're not proposing, and we won't be making any proposal to Massachusetts.
Yep, exactly.
It's misleading.
Not the part
exactly.
in Fall River that
I
actually
apologize.
states this.
No problem.
Is
So-
there any way we can get a
That's Monho.
copy of?
So
what
I've made a
you're talking about?
motion, and, but I don't think I have a second.
I'd like to amend it to put one house.
It's out, yeah, it is. You can't do that.
Can't do it.
You can't do it.
Okay.
It's governed by zoning anyways, Rosemary.
Yeah, right, okay.
And the Tardys will address that issue too when they get to town council. So did you now wish to?
I'll second your motion.
So we've got a motion and a second. Now, is there discussion on that? Does anybody have any brilliant ideas as to how we can make everybody happy?
Yeah, we get on here.
Yeah, let people that
We always
lived there
try to
for
do
almost
that.
60 years of their lives have it the way it was, instead of somebody new
My
coming in and
brain
changing
stopped
everything.
working an hour ago.
I would
To
just suggest, Mr.
accommodate
Hardy,
themselves,
that
but
the
they're not
Tardys could
willing
probably
to
disclaim any
uses.
right if you were to abandon all the way up to the Fall River line, but
Yeah, no,
I agree. I think it should go. It's poor planning.
whatever. You made your motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to.
Just a
Call
thought.
for a vote.
So I'm not hearing any further discussion, and we do have minutes to approve. So I'll call the question. All of those in favor of my motion? Okay. You two are not in favor of my motion?
Abstaining.
You're abstaining.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
So we don't have enough.
Just shows that it's
And,
not
and Amanda is also abstaining?
The only question is whether, for abandonment, is whether that paper road has ceased to be useful to the public. That's the question. But
So how do you say that it's ceasing?
But so are we actually making a determination, or we're just pushing this to the town council?
We're pushing this to the town council.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. And then they have to go through a public hearing process after notifying all of the abutters. And maybe other people, in addition to the Tardys, will show up before town council. But they drop this hot potato in our lap, and I'd like to drop it back in their lap. With the best of, you would. And Amanda, did you vote?
To abstain.
You don't. Okay, so do we have enough? Do we have enough votes? 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 votes, so we're okay.
Are you abstaining?
Peter did.
Amanda says no.
Two did not, so you have
Peter
4.
did.
No, she just said she was in agreement.
Oh.
Okay.
I'm going to leave you.
Okay. So that's where we are.
Thank you so much for your
Okay.
consideration. I know it was a long
Thank you.
The rest we can do at town council meeting.
Well, yeah, but are we actually gonna get notified about it, or do we have to buy newspapers that it's not put in?
you will get notice, but I'm also happy to take
No, that's fine. We'll get it from the town. I'm sorry, nothing against you, but to say that he doesn't mean to inconvenience anybody, I don't buy it.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you for listening.
So the last item on our agenda under number 4, Planning Board B, is approval of minutes. And we have 2 sets of minutes, May 17 and June 21. Since I wasn't at the May 17 meeting, I have to, I am not allowed to vote on that. So, Rosemary, you were chairing. Would you like to?
I would like to go home, but I can't see.
You may. You have my permission to go home, and thank you for your help tonight. So
Let the record show I'm leaving.
So anybody who was at the May 17 meeting, did you read the minutes, and do you agree that those minutes are in good shape and therefore do not?
I'd like to continue it.
Colbea. Four people.
That those minutes for May 17 are in good shape and can be approved without any amendments. So does anybody have any red ink on the May 17 who went to the May 17? So Amanda, why don't you make a motion to approve May 17 since you were there? Because I can't.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. As presented. And do we have a second? And we have Christine seconding that motion. All of those in favor? Ooh, I can't vote. But we have 4 votes in favor. We don't need Rosemary for this.
No,
This is
you
just
don't
minutes,
need me.
right?
You have 4 because you have a majority,
Yeah.
Yeah.
barely.
So those minutes are now officially approved. And that brings us to the June 21 minutes. I was at the June 21 meeting, and I would like to make a motion to approve the June 21, 2022 minutes without any alterations or amendments. Does somebody want to second that?
I'll second.
And Christine seconds that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor of approving the June 21, 2022 minutes?
5.
You weren't present, okay, you can't. So there are only 3 of us, actually. 1, 2, 3.
Oh.
And you weren't there. No, you were there, and you
Yeah.
do vote.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 4.
Last motion. One motion to go.
Just one motion to go, which is to adjourn.
Oh, I made the motion.
Second.
Yeah, I mean, these agendas are too long. I'm going to work on this for the next agenda. Just pile a lot of stuff into it.
See everybody in August, I guess.
See you in August.